The ancient world was a realm woven from stories, a tapestry where fact and fable danced together on the lips of poets and in the hearts of listeners. Long before ink met parchment, before the scrolls of philosophers or the accounts of historians, there were the voices of bards, telling and retelling the tales of gods, heroes, monsters, and men. Of all these ancient stories, none has endured quite like the Odyssey, the epic voyage of Odysseus, king of Ithaca, whose journey home from war became one of the foundational myths of Western civilization. To understand the Odyssey is to step into the dawn of Greek culture, into an age when memory was the greatest treasure and song the surest vessel of history, the world that shaped and was shaped by Homer. If Homer was indeed a single man and not a name for many voices, was a world in flux. The memories of the Bronze Age, with its palaces and warriors, lingered in the ruins of Mycenae and Troy, in the crumbling walls and broken statues scattered across the Aegean. Yet the Greeks of the 8th century BCE lived in a different age, one less grand, more uncertain, yet bursting with the energy of renewal and rediscovery. In this world, poetry was not a private act, but a public performance, the heart of communal life. The singer, Aidos, was both entertainer and historian, weaving the glories and sorrows of the past into the fabric of the present. At feasts and festivals, by the hearth or under the stars, the epic tales were sung in dactylic hexameter, a rhythm as ancient as the sea itself. The story of Odysseus was one of many, but it stood apart for its richness, its humanity, and its complexity. The origins of the Odyssey reach deep into the well of oral tradition. For centuries before it was written down, the tale existed in the minds and mouths of countless storytellers. Each performance was both repetition and reinvention, shaped by the needs of the moment and the temperament of the audience. This oral heritage left its mark. The repeated epithets, wily Odysseus, rosy-fingered dawn, the formulaic scenes of feasting, mourning, and battle, the structure that allowed listeners to follow even the longest journeys. The poem is a living record of a world where the past is always present, where the gods walk among mortals, and the wind carries both song and memory. The Odyssey is set in the aftermath of the greatest of Greek wars, the 10-year siege of Troy, immortalized in the Iliad. The Greeks believed that Troy was a real place, a city whose ruins still haunted the shores of Asia Minor. The Trojan War, with its heroes and betrayals, its wrathful gods and tragic fates, became the touchstone for Greek identity. Every city, every family, every hero claimed a place in the story, linking their own histories to the deeds of Achilles, Hector, and Odysseus. But the Odyssey is not merely a sequel to the Iliad, it is a story of return, of nostos, the longing for home that lies at the heart of Greek experience. For the Greeks, the sea was both highway and barrier, a place of possibility and peril. Odysseus's journey, with its storms and shipwrecks, its strange lands and stranger creatures, reflected the realities of a people always venturing outward, always seeking but never fully at rest. The world outside the polis was a world of marvels and monsters, of opportunity and danger. The poem's geography is a puzzle, an imaginative map where real places blend with fantasy. Scholars have tried for centuries to plot Odysseus's course. Was the land of the lotus eaters in North Africa, the Cyclops Island in Sicily, the underworld at the edge of the world? But the power of the Odyssey lies not in its precision, but in its dreamlike expansiveness. The Mediterranean becomes a canvas for the exploration of human nature. Desire, curiosity, fear, hope, and the relentless need to belong. Behind the exploits of Odysseus lies a world in transformation. Archaeological discoveries have revealed that the Greece of Homer was a patchwork of small kingdoms and villages, emerging from the shadows of the so-called Dark Age that followed the collapse of Mycenaean civilization. Writing had disappeared, trade had diminished, and great cities had fallen into ruin. Yet by the 8th century BCE, a new dawn was breaking. The Greeks began to trade again, to establish colonies, to develop new forms of government and worship. In this context, the Odyssey is both a preservation and an invention. It recalls a world of great heroes, lavish feasts, and palatial halls, a memory of the lost grandeur of Mycenae. But it also speaks to the new realities of Homer's own age, the importance of cunning over brute strength, the values of hospitality and cleverness, the dangers and possibilities of travel. Odysseus is a hero for a changing world, not the invincible warrior of old, but a survivor, a thinker, a man who wins as often by his words as by his sword. The gods of the Odyssey are both ancient and immediate, reflections of nature and society, capricious and familiar. Athena, patron of wisdom, takes Odysseus under her wing, guiding and protecting him. Poseidon, god of the sea, hounds him for a single act of hubris. The interactions between mortal and divine blur the boundaries between fate and free will, making every choice at once personal and cosmic. For the Greeks, the world was alive with power and meaning. Every storm a message, every encounter a test. The Odyssey is also a story of memory and forgetting. Throughout his journey, Odysseus is forced to remember who he is, and to make others remember as well. From the enchantments of Circe and Calypso to the oblivion offered by the lotus, the hero's greatest challenge is not simply to survive, but to maintain his identity, the telling of stories within the story. Odysseus recounting his adventures to the Phaeacians, the bard Demodocus singing at the court of Alcinous, reminds us that storytelling is itself a form of survival, a way of asserting order in a world of chaos. At the heart of the Odyssey is the idea of home, not just a place but a state of being, a sense of belonging. For Odysseus, home is Ithaca, the rocky island, and the patient wife Penelope, who weaves and unweaves her loom while suitors consume her wealth and plot her marriage. The longing for home is universal, but in the world of Homer it takes on a particular resonance. The house, the hearth, the bonds of kinship, these are the foundations of Greek society, threatened always by violence, absence, and change. The poem's oral origins also ensured its adaptability. As the Greeks spread across the Mediterranean, founding colonies from Sicily to the Black Sea, they carried the tales of Homer with them. Each community heard its own anxieties and hopes echoed in the wanderings of Odysseus. The story became a shared inheritance, a way of imagining Greekness in a world that was always wider and more uncertain than the limits of any city or tribe. As centuries passed, the Odyssey moved from oral performance to written text. The invention of the Greek alphabet allowed poets and scholars to record the epic, to fix its words on page and scroll. Yet the traces of oral tradition remained in the repetitions and patterns, the formal language, the structure that invites memory and improvisation. Even today, reading the Odyssey is to hear the distant echo of the bard's voice, to sense the presence of an audience gathered in anticipation. The question of authorship, who was Homer, remains unresolved. Ancient tradition imagined a blind poet wandering the coasts of Asia Minor, singing the glories of gods and men. Modern scholars debate whether the epics are the work of a single genius or the collective creation of generations. What matters in the end is not the name, but the achievement, the crafting of a world that feels both ancient and ever new, a mirror for every age. The context of the Odyssey is thus both specific and universal. It arose from the particular realities of archaic Greece, a world emerging from darkness, seeking order, identity, and meaning. But it also speaks to timeless questions. How do we find our way home? What does it mean to be a stranger, a guest, a host? How do we remember who we are when the world around us changes? The world of Homer is gone, but the song remains. In every telling, the Odyssey is reborn, a journey across seas both real and imagined, a search for home and self, a celebration of cunning and endurance, a meditation on the power of story. To enter the world of the Odyssey is to join a conversation that has lasted for nearly 3,000 years. A conversation about who we are, where we belong, and how we find our way in a universe at once beautiful, dangerous, and filled with meaning. The tale of Odysseus begins in the ashes of another story, a war so vast and terrible that its echoes shaped the entire Greek imagination. The Odyssey is a poem of return, but to return one must first depart. And for Odysseus, for Achilles, for Agamemnon and Helen, and the countless heroes and victims of legend, departure meant the ships launched to the plains of Troy. The Trojan War is the necessary prelude to the Odyssey, a story of passion and vengeance, glory and ruin, the canvas on which the journey of Odysseus was first painted. To the ancient Greeks, the Trojan War was more than a story. It was history, myth, and memory woven together, the event that explained the shape of their world. The war's origins, like so much in myth, are tangled and full of portent. It begins, not with strategy or politics, but with a quarrel among the gods at the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. Eris, the goddess of discord, thrown out of the feast, tossed a golden apple inscribed "To the fairest" into the company of Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Their dispute led to the fateful judgment of Paris, a prince of Troy. Each goddess offered him a gift. Hera promised power, Athena promised wisdom and victory, but Aphrodite promised him the love of the world's most beautiful woman, Helen, queen of Sparta. Paris chose Aphrodite, and in doing so, set the world on fire. Helen's flight, or abduction, with Paris to Troy, ignited a storm of vengeance. Menelaus, her husband, called upon the oath sworn by the Greek kings, and soon 1,000 ships carried the greatest army the world had known across the wine-dark sea. For 10 years the Greeks besieged Troy, a city said to be wealthy, mighty, and fated to fall. Heroes gathered on both sides. Achilles, the greatest of the Greeks, whose wrath and destiny are the heart of the Iliad. Hector, prince of Troy, noble and doomed. Agamemnon, commander of kings. Odysseus, known already for his cunning. Ajax, Diomedes, Patroclus, Aeneas, each a figure for the ages. The Iliad, the sister epic to the Odyssey, recounts but a few weeks in the long war, focusing on the wrath of Achilles and the death of Hector. Yet the cycle of the Trojan War, preserved in lost epics and fragmentary legends, includes a host of other stories. The quarrel of Agamemnon and Achilles, the embassy to Achilles, the death of Patroclus, the forging of Achilles' new armor by Hephaestus, the fatal duel between Achilles and Hector, the ransoming of Hector's body by Priam. In these tales, the line between mortal and immortal blurs, and the gods, Zeus, Hera, Apollo, Athena, Aphrodite, take sides, shape destinies, and suffer their own slights and defeats. Odysseus, even in the Iliad, is a figure apart, not the strongest nor the most beautiful, but the cleverest, the man of many wiles, the master of stratagems. It is Odysseus who persuades Achilles to rejoin the battle, Odysseus who retrieves the body of Patroclus, Odysseus who endures hardship and humiliation with patience and wit. As the war drags on, his cunning becomes ever more vital. When brute force and valor cannot breach the walls of Troy, it is Odysseus who devises the ultimate trick, the wooden horse. The story of the Trojan horse, so familiar to modern audiences, is only briefly alluded to in the Odyssey itself. Yet in later tradition, it becomes the defining act of the war. The Greeks, pretending to abandon the siege, leave a massive wooden horse at the gates of Troy, its belly filled with warriors. The Trojans, believing it a gift to the gods, drag it inside their walls, ignoring the warnings of Laocoon and Cassandra. At night, while the city sleeps, the Greeks emerge, open the gates, and Troy is destroyed. Fire and slaughter follow. The proud city, home to so many legends, is reduced to rubble and legend. The end of Troy marks both victory and catastrophe. For the Greeks, homecoming, Nostos, is fraught with peril. The gods, angered by sacrilege and broken oaths, scatter the victors across the sea. Agamemnon will return only to be murdered by his wife and her lover. Menelaus will wander for years. Ajax will perish in a storm. For Odysseus, the journey home will be the longest and most arduous of all. The war is over, but the world is not at peace. The memory of Troy haunted the Greek imagination. Every city claimed some tie to the war. Every hero boasted a grandfather or ancestor who fought at its walls. The ruins of Hizarlik, identified by Schliemann in the 19th century as the site of Troy, reveal layer upon layer of destruction and rebuilding, a fitting symbol for a story that is never wholly told or owned. Was Troy a real city? Did the war happen as the poets described? Archaeology suggests a kernel of truth, a wealthy city destroyed by fire, a clash between East and West. But the epic layers of gods and heroes, of apple and horse, belong to the realm of myth. For Homer's audience, the Trojan War was a prism through which to view all things: love and honor, fate and freedom, violence and loss. The war's heroes are both models and warnings. Achilles is the greatest warrior, but his anger brings ruin. Agamemnon is king of kings, but his pride and blindness cost him dear. Helen is both the cause of conflict and a symbol of beauty's power and peril. Odysseus, the survivor, becomes the hero of a new kind of story, not of conquest, but of endurance and return. The world that emerges from the ashes of Troy is one of displacement and longing. The great city is gone, its survivors scattered. The victors are themselves victims, punished for hubris and impiety, haunted by guilt and the anger of the gods. The Odyssey begins in the aftermath, its hero exiled by Poseidon for blinding the Cyclops, forced to wander for a decade through dangers and temptations. The journey is both literal and symbolic, a quest to reclaim home, self, and meaning in a world forever altered by war. In the Odyssey, the legacy of Troy is everywhere. The poem opens not with Odysseus himself, but with his son Telemachus searching for news of his lost father. The suitors who besiege Penelope's house are themselves survivors of the war, now preying on their absent comrade's family. Nestor, Menelaus, Helen, all the old warriors reappear, bearing scars and stories. The gods continue to intervene, shaping the destinies of men according to whims and grudges born on the plains of Troy. The shadow of the war shapes every encounter. Odysseus's wanderings take him to lands of wonder and terror, but his ultimate goal is always home, a home threatened, changed, yet still the source of hope. His journey is a healing of wounds, a restoration of order after the chaos of battle. In this sense, the Odyssey is as much about memory as adventure, the struggle to remember what was lost, to mend what was broken, to make sense of suffering and survival. The poem also meditates on the costs of glory. The Iliad exalts the warrior's death. The Odyssey questions the price of heroism. Odysseus survives not because he is the strongest, but because he adapts, negotiates, and endures. The world he returns to is not the world he left. His homecoming is both a triumph and a reckoning. The poem's conclusion, with its blend of violence and forgiveness, justice and mercy, reflects a society grappling with the aftermath of war. For the Greeks, the story of Troy was the story of themselves, their fears, hopes, and contradictions. The war was both a founding myth and a cautionary tale, a source of pride and regret. Its legacy shaped not only poetry, but art, religion, politics, and daily life. Every feast, every sacrifice, every journey by sea or land recalled the heroes of old and the gods who watched, and sometimes wept. The Odyssey stands as both sequel and counterpoint to the Iliad. Where the first poem celebrates the fire of youth and the glory of battle, the second explores the wisdom of age and the necessity of reconciliation. The journey from Troy to Ithaca is a journey from chaos to order, from loss to recovery, from war to peace. In the figure of Odysseus, the Greeks found a hero not just for the battlefield, but for the trials of life itself, the prelude to the age. Odyssey is thus a tapestry of war and aftermath, glory and grief. It is a reminder that every ending is also a beginning, that the stories we tell about the past shape the journeys we undertake in the present. The ruins of Troy stand as both warning and inspiration, a testament to the power of human striving, the destructiveness of pride, and the enduring need to find our way home. In every retelling, the war is reborn, not as a fixed event, but as a living memory, reshaped by each generation. The Odyssey, in beginning with the end of Troy, invites us to ask not only how we fight, but how we heal. Not only how we win, but how we live after the battles are done. It is, in the end, a poem about what comes after, the challenge and the promise of homecoming for Odysseus and for us all. Imagine, for a moment, the flickering firelight in a great hall, stone walls hung with woven tapestries, the night air alive with the scents of roasting meat and pine. It is evening in an age before books, before cinema, before any story could be summoned on a whim. Instead, there is only voice and ear, performer and listener, a fragile spell cast in song. This is the world of Homeric poetry, a world where the Odyssey comes alive not as silent text, but as an event, a meeting place between poet and audience, past and present, memory and hope. For most of its history, the Odyssey was not read, but heard. Its earliest existence was as an oral performance passed down from singer to singer, generation to generation. The poet, the Aoidos, was both guardian and creator, responsible for preserving tradition while adapting it to the needs of each new audience. In a world where writing was rare and precious, the epic poem was a living, breathing thing, as much a part of the community as its rituals and its laws. Who were these early performers? Some perhaps were wandering minstrels, traveling from town to town, their lyres slung over their backs, seeking hospitality and reward. Others may have been attached to the courts of kings or local chieftains, honored guests whose arrival was the highlight of the year's festivals. In either case, the role of the poet was vital. In societies where lineage, reputation, and memory were everything, the epic singer was the keeper of fame, the one who could immortalize a hero's deeds or ensure they were forgotten. The performance of epic poetry was itself a communal ritual. The setting might be a palace, a village square, or the temporary encampments of a festival. Audiences could range from kings and nobles to farmers, craftsmen, and children. All would gather to hear the tales that linked them to a heroic past that gave meaning to the present and hope for the future. The epic's rhythm, repetition, and formulaic language were not just artistic choices, but practical tools, allowing the poet to improvise, to adapt the story, to engage the crowd, and respond to their moods. The language of the Odyssey reflects its origins and performance. The dactylic hexameter, the grand rolling meter of epic verse, was designed for the ear, for memory, for musical accompaniment. The poem's many epithets, wily Odysseus, swift-footed Achilles, rosy-fingered, Dawn, served as mnemonic aids for the singer and as familiar touchstones for the audience. Each phrase evoked a world of shared understanding, a shorthand for character and event. Scenes of feasting, of greeting strangers, of mourning the dead. These, too, followed set patterns, allowing the poet to weave new episodes into the fabric of tradition. But the relationship between poet and audience was never static. Each performance was a negotiation, an act of creation shaped by the expectations, desires, and anxieties of the listeners. In times of war or crisis, the tale of Odysseus's cunning and survival might offer comfort or inspiration. In times of peace and plenty, the homecoming and reunion could be a reminder of what was at stake. The poet's authority was both absolute and provisional. To change the story too much was to risk censure. To recite it exactly as before was to risk boredom. Thus, the Odyssey is both remarkably consistent in its outlines and endlessly varied in its details. Over time, as Greek society changed, so too did the nature of performance. The rise of writing in the 8th and 7th centuries BCE allowed for the preservation of longer, more complex epics. The text of the Odyssey, as we know it today, was likely fixed in Athens during the 6th century BCE, possibly as part of the Panathenaic festival, a grand celebration where rhapsodes, professional reciters, competed to deliver the poems to the assembled crowds. These rhapsodes, unlike the older Aoidoi, relied on memorization rather than improvisation, presenting a canonical version of the story. The transition from oral performance to written text was not abrupt, but gradual, and for centuries the two coexisted. The written Odyssey became a touchstone for education and culture, studied by school children, quoted by philosophers, and cited by politicians. Yet it remained a work meant to be heard, its rhythms and repetitions lingering in the minds of those who listened. The manuscript was a script for performance, a score for the ancient equivalent of theater. Performance also shaped the way the Odyssey was interpreted. The poem's meaning was never fixed, but shifted according to context. In aristocratic halls, Odysseus might be celebrated as the model of cunning and nobility, a hero whose endurance and loyalty justified the privileges of the elite. In the democratic assemblies of later Greece, his skepticism of authority, his reliance on wit rather than brute strength, might be admired. Among colonists and explorers, his wanderings became metaphors for the Greek encounter with the wider world, the challenges of the unknown, the promise of new beginnings. For the Greeks themselves, the Odyssey was a mirror, reflecting both the ideals and the contradictions of their culture. The values it embodied, xenia, or hospitality, nostos, or homecoming, kleos, or glory, were not mere abstractions but lived realities. The treatment of strangers, the loyalty of family, the dangers of pride and forgetfulness. These were not only themes in a poem, but challenges in daily life. The poet's voice became the conscience of the community, reminding listeners of what it meant to be Greek, to be human. The reception of the Odyssey extended beyond Greece. As Greek culture spread throughout the Mediterranean, through colonization, trade, and conquest, the epic became a shared heritage, translated and adapted by new audiences. In Rome, the story of Odysseus, or Ulysses as the Romans called him, was recast in Latin verse, admired by poets like Virgil and Ovid, whose own works would shape the literature of Europe for centuries. The themes of exile, wanderings, and the longing for home spoke to peoples across time and place, from the Jewish exiles in Babylon to the pilgrims of the Middle Ages. The performance tradition also influenced the physical spaces of the ancient world. Theaters and festivals, temples and shrines, even the city streets themselves became stages for retelling the epics. Statues of Odysseus, frescoes depicting his adventures, and inscriptions invoking his name adorned public and private spaces, embedding the story in the landscape of daily life. The Odyssey was not just a poem, but a presence, a living thread in the fabric of society. As centuries passed, the poem's audience changed, but its power endured. In the Hellenistic and Roman worlds, scholars and commentators pored over its verses, teasing out hidden meanings, allegories, and lessons. The epic became a foundation for philosophy, rhetoric, and ethics. Christian thinkers, too, found in the wanderings of Odysseus a metaphor for the soul's journey, the perils of temptation, and the hope of salvation. The Odyssey's journey from performance to text, from local tradition to universal story, is itself a kind of odyssey, a passage through time, space, and imagination. Each new audience, each new reader or listener encounters not just a tale of ancient Greece, but a story that asks eternal questions. Who am I? Where do I belong? How do I face the unknown? Today, we encounter the Odyssey in many forms, as a school text, as an inspiration for novels and films, as a subject of scholarly debate and artistic reinvention, yet the essence of the poem remains rooted in its origins as performance. To read the Odyssey is to hear, however faintly, the echo of the poet's voice, to sense the presence of an audience leaning forward, eager to hear what happens next. The relationship between poet and audience, performance and reception, is thus at the heart of the Odyssey's enduring appeal. The poem survives because it was and remains a shared experience, a dialogue across generations, cultures, and continents. Whether sung in the smoky halls of ancient Ithaca or read aloud in a modern classroom, the Odyssey invites us to join its audience, to become part of its journey. The poet's task, like Odysseus's own, is both to remember and to invent, to honor the past while embracing the challenges of the present. Each performance is a new beginning, each telling an act of renewal. In this way, the Odyssey is not only a story about a journey, but a journey in itself, a movement from one voice to another, from one world to the next. As the fire burns low and the song comes to an end, the audience lingers, changed by what they have heard. The story of Odysseus, born in the mouths of poets and the hearts of listeners, lives on, always ready to be told again. The Odyssey stands as one of the masterpieces of ancient literature, yet its greatness lies not only in its story, but in the way it is told. The composition, structure, and language of the epic are themselves marvels of invention, products of centuries of oral tradition, and perhaps the genius of a poet who knew how to shape inherited material into a unified, unforgettable whole. To unravel the inner workings of the Odyssey is to peer into the mind of an age, a culture that valued memory as highly as bravery, and the art of telling as much as the events themselves. The first and perhaps most striking feature of the Odyssey is its form. Like its twin, the Iliad, the poem is composed in dactylic hexameter, a meter suited to the roll of a ship on the open sea, the beat of a march, the stateliness of ritual. 6 feet per line, each foot made up of 1 long and 2 short syllables, gave the poetry its incantatory, hypnotic rhythm. The oral poets who composed and performed the poem used this structure not only to aid their own memory, but to draw their audiences into a world apart, where gods and heroes moved to the music of the spoken word. Within this framework, the Odyssey unfolds as a tapestry of scenes, episodes, and speeches, each woven with care and deliberation. The poem opens not with Odysseus himself, but with the plight of his household, his son Telemachus, his wife Penelope beset by suitors, his island of Ithaca thrown into chaos by his long absence. Only after this domestic crisis is established does the narrative shift to the hero's own journey, recounted in flashback as Odysseus himself tells his story to the Phaeacians. This ring structure, with stories nested within stories, allows for both suspense and reflection, giving the poem a psychological depth unique in ancient epic. The use of in medias res, beginning in the middle of things, is another hallmark of the poem's composition. Rather than telling the story in strict chronological order, the poet plunges us into the heart of the action, revealing the past through memory, song, and retelling. The Odyssey becomes a meditation not only on what happens, but on how it is, remembered and told. The audience, like Odysseus's listeners, is drawn into the process of storytelling, piecing together the narrative from fragments, digressions, and echoes. The characters of the Odyssey are brought to life through dialogue, action, and above all, through their words. Speeches are a central feature of the poem. Councils and debates, prayers and boasts, laments and reunions. Each character's voice is distinct, shaped by social status, situation, and personality. Odysseus is the master of speech, able to persuade, deceive, comfort, or challenge with equal skill. Penelope's words are measured and guarded, Telemachus's earnest and searching, the suitors loud and crude. Even the gods speak in tones suited to their divine or all-too-human natures. This attention to language extends to the famous Homeric epithets and formulas, the repeated phrases and descriptions that characterize both people and things. Wily, Odysseus, rosy-fingered Dawn, swift-footed Achilles, wine-dark sea. These are not mere ornaments, but essential tools of the oral poet. They fill out the meter, provide memory aids, and give the poem a sense of tradition and continuity. At the same time, their repetition creates a kind of music, an expectation and reassurance for the listener. Each return of an epithet is a reminder that, for all the novelty of the tale, it belongs to an unbroken line of storytelling. The Odyssey's structure is also shaped by the devices of oral composition. The use of stock scenes, feasts, arrivals, recognitions, sacrifices, serves both practical and artistic ends. For the poet, these scenes are building blocks, easily adapted and rearranged to suit the needs of a particular performance. For the audience, they are familiar landmarks, moments of ritual and reassurance amid the uncertainty of adventure. The pattern of hospitality, for example, the greeting of strangers, the offering of food and drink, the exchange of stories, repeats throughout the poem, reflecting the centrality of Xenia in Greek society and literature. Yet for all its formulaic elements, the Odyssey is a work of extraordinary variety and invention. The journey of Odysseus is episodic, each adventure a self-contained story with its own tone and moral. The encounters with the Cyclops, Circe, the Sirens, Scylla, and Charybdis, Calypso, each is a miniature epic, exploring different aspects of human experience: curiosity, temptation, loyalty, fear, desire, and the struggle for identity. The poem is at once a linear journey and a series of returns, a movement forward and an endless circling back. The language of the Odyssey is a blend of the archaic and the immediate. The poem preserves forms and words from earlier stages of Greek, echoes of the Mycenaean world from which its stories partly derive. At the same time, its imagery is vivid and concrete: the salt tang of the sea, the gleam of bronze, the tears of a grieving father, or the laughter of a child. The similes are one of the poem's glories, extended comparisons that connect the world of heroes to the world of the audience. A hero's shout is like the roar of a lion, the weaving of Penelope is like the patient labor of bees, a battle is like a storm at sea. These similes are not decorative but essential, grounding the supernatural in the real, the distant in the familiar. The Odyssey's composition also reflects the blending of traditions and the layering of voices. Some episodes seem older, more primal: the blinding of the Cyclops, the journey to the underworld, while others are products of later refinement, with greater psychological complexity and social nuance. Scholars have debated for centuries whether the Odyssey is the work of a single author, a later redactor, or a collective tradition shaped over generations. The answer may be all of these. The poem is both individual and communal, the work of genius and of memory. The structure of the poem mirrors the themes it explores. The journey home is never straightforward. It is interrupted, delayed, diverted by gods and mortals, by desire and despair. The narrative circles around loss and return, identity and disguise, truth and deception. Recognition scenes, when Odysseus is known at last by Telemachus, Penelope, Eurycleia, are moments of revelation, but also of uncertainty. How do we know what is true? How do we trust the stories we are told, or tell about ourselves? The Odyssey is also a poem of doubling and reversal. Odysseus is both guest and host, hero and beggar, king and outcast. Penelope is both faithful wife and cunning deceiver, weaving by day and unweaving by night. The suitors are both the children of friends and the destroyers of order. Each character, each episode, carries echoes and opposites, inviting the audience to reflect on the ambiguities of life. The epic is punctuated by moments of lyric intensity, songs, laments, prayers, and prophecies that lift the narrative into realms of emotion and vision. The song of Demodocus at the court of the Phaeacians, the lament of Penelope for her lost husband, the prophecies of Tiresias in the underworld, each opens a window into the inner lives of the characters, revealing their fears, hopes, and longings. These passages are among the most moving in all ancient literature, testament to the poet's ability to unite action and reflection, story and song. At the same time, the Odyssey is a work of supreme control. The arrangement of episodes, the balance of action and rest, the alternation of suspense and release, are carefully managed to create a sense of unity amid variety. The transitions between the mortal and the divine, the heroic and the domestic, are seamless, allowing the poem to move effortlessly from the heights of myth to the realities of daily life. The language of the poem, finally, is both simple and profound. The Odyssey is filled with moments of humor, tenderness, irony, and insight. Its heroes and heroines are not remote demigods but recognizable human beings, capable of error and redemption. The poem's exploration of suffering, endurance, and hope speaks across ages and cultures. inviting each new audience to find their own reflection in its lines. To study the composition, structure, and language of the Odyssey is to discover the art behind the magic, the craft that allows the poem to endure, to speak anew to every generation. The poem is a world in itself, constructed from words and memories, dreams and rituals. It is, in the end, a testament to the power of storytelling, the ability to shape chaos into order, to find meaning in the midst of uncertainty, to bring the past alive for the present. In the music of its lines, the depth of its characters, the intricacy of its design, the Odyssey remains, after nearly 3,000 years, a journey worth taking, one that reveals not only the mind of its creator, but the heart of the human story. The Odyssey unfolds across a sea of wonder and danger, a map that stretches from the familiar harbors of Ithaca to the farthest edges of human imagination. To follow Odysseus on his journey is to embark on a voyage, not only through the geography of the ancient Mediterranean, but also through a landscape shaped by dream and memory, fear and longing. The Greek world of Homer is both a physical place and a realm of myth, where islands and capes, caves and palaces shimmer with possibility and threat. The Greeks of Homer's age were sailors and traders, accustomed to journeys that could last weeks or years, to coasts where every headland might conceal a city or a monster. Their world was defined by the sea, the wine-dark expanse that linked communities and scattered them across islands large and small. To map the Odyssey is to see not a straight line, but a tangled web of routes and returns, a journey that is as much about inner transformation as it is about crossing water and land. The poem opens with the hero stranded on Ogygia, the remote island of the nymph Calypso. For 7 years, Odysseus is both captive and guest, longing for home but unable to escape. The location of Ogygia, like so many places in the Odyssey, is both specific and elusive. Ancient commentators placed it at the edge of the world, west of the known sea, perhaps in the Atlantic, perhaps nowhere at all. For the Greeks, such locations marked the boundaries not only of geography but of experience, the limits of what could be known, the realms where mortals might brush against the divine. Odysseus's journey is a litany of strange lands. The island of the Lotus Eaters, where memory fades, the cave of the Cyclops, where law and civilization end, the kingdom of Aelus, master of the winds, the cannibal Laestrygonians, the enchantments of Circe's Aiaia, the darkness of the underworld. Each stop on his voyage is a test, a revelation of character and fate. Some locations may correspond to real places, the western coasts of Italy, Sicily, North Africa, or the islands of the Aegean. Others belong entirely to the world of myth. The ancient Greeks were fascinated by geography, but their maps were as much about meaning as measurement. The known world, the oikumene, stretched from the Pillars of Heracles, the Straits of Gibraltar in the west, to the edges of the Black Sea, from Libya and Egypt in the south to the lands of the Hyperboreans in the far north. Beyond these boundaries, anything was possible. Islands of bliss, lands of giants, seas of monsters. The stories of the Odyssey filled in the blank spaces, peopling the margins with wonders and warnings. The journey to the underworld, for example, is a voyage beyond life itself. Odysseus sails to the land of the Cimmerians, where sun never shines, to seek the shade of the prophet Tiresias. For Homer's audience, this was not only a physical journey but a spiritual ordeal. The crossing of the boundaries that separate, the living from the dead, the known from the unknown. The river Oceanus circling the world is both a real feature of Greek cosmology and a symbol of ultimate distance. The islands of the Sirens, the straits of Scylla and Charybdis, the pasture of Helios cattle, each is a threshold, a place where choice and chance determine fate. These landscapes are charged with moral and psychological meaning. The Sirens, song is the allure of knowledge and oblivion. Scylla and Charybdis, the inescapable perils that confront every traveler. The journey is both outward and inward, a series of encounters with the self. Yet, even as the Odyssey draws on mythic geography, it is rooted in the realities of the Mediterranean world. The sea routes followed by Odysseus echo those of merchants and colonists, pirates and explorers. The poem reflects the dangers and uncertainties of navigation. Sudden storms, treacherous currents, the need for cunning and luck. The skill of the sailor is both celebrated and tested. The knowledge of winds and stars, of harbors and reefs, is as vital as courage or strength. The home that Odysseus seeks, Ithaca, is a real island, one of the Ionian group off the western coast of Greece. Small, rocky, and hard to farm, it is nonetheless the center of his longing and the measure of his journey. For Homer's audience, the names of places, Pylos, Sparta, Scheria, Troy, were not abstractions, but part of a shared world. Each had its own legends, its own heroes, its own place in the network of stories that bound Greece together. At the same time, the Odyssey expands the boundaries of the Greek world. The lands visited by Odysseus are liminal spaces, places of transformation where the normal rules do not apply. They are often inhabited by beings who are both like and unlike mortals, nymphs and giants, enchantresses and shades. These encounters test not only Odysseus's cunning, but his humanity, the qualities that distinguish men from monsters, Greeks from barbarians, guests from hosts. The poem also reflects the social geography of its age. The rules of hospitality, xenia, are observed and violated in turn, marking the difference between civilization and savagery. The palace of Alcinous, king of the Phaeacians, is a model of generosity and order, a place where the stranger is welcomed and honored. The cave of Polyphemus, by contrast, is a place of lawlessness, where guests are devoured instead of fed. The journey thus becomes a test of social values, an exploration of what it means to belong. For the Greeks, the act of mapping was inseparable from storytelling. The boundaries of the known world were always expanding, as travelers returned with tales of distant lands and unfamiliar peoples. The Odyssey captures this spirit of curiosity and adventure, the restless urge to explore, to ask what lies beyond the horizon. The world is not a closed system, but a field of possibility, open to discovery and danger. The poem's geography is also a metaphor for the mind. The wanderings of Odysseus are mirrored by his mental and emotional journeys, his shifts of identity, his moments of doubt and recognition. The landscapes he traverses are externalizations of inner states, the forgetfulness of the lotus eaters, the rage of the Cyclops, the seduction of Circe, the despair of shipwreck. Each place is a challenge, a mirror, a lesson. The imagination of the Odyssey was contagious. Later generations of Greeks and Romans tried to pin down the route of Odysseus, to identify the islands and capes, the monsters and marvels. Scholars and travelers set out with maps and compasses, eager to walk in the hero's footsteps. In time, the quest for the real locations became a metaphor for the search for meaning in the poem itself. Each age found new correspondences, new interpretations, new islands on which to land. Yet, the genius of the Odyssey is to leave its geography ambiguous, shimmering at the edge of certainty. The places are both everywhere and nowhere, rooted in the world of the listener but open to the infinite. The journey is never only about getting from one place to another, but about becoming, remembering, and returning. The map is drawn in the imagination, a space where past and present, myth and reality, meet. In the end, the Odyssey's world is our own, a place of danger and wonder, longing and discovery, where the quest for home is also the search for self. To map the Greek world is to enter a story that has no fixed boundaries, a landscape shaped as much by hope and fear as by mountains and seas. The journey of Odysseus across the shifting waters and uncertain shores of his world remains the archetype of every voyage, every return, every act of finding a way home through the labyrinth of life. In the gallery of Greek heroes, Odysseus is an enigma. He stands among the mightiest of the warriors who fought at Troy, but his fame rests not on strength or speed, not on divine parentage or the favor of gods, but on his cunning, adaptability, and sheer persistence. He is polytropos, a man of many turns, endlessly resourceful, always thinking, always moving. To understand the Odyssey is to understand the nature of its hero, his origins in myth, his complex personality, and the enduring fascination he holds for every generation. Odysseus first appears in the epic cycle as one of Helen's many suitors, compelled by oath to join the Greek expedition against Troy. He is the king of Ithaca, a small rocky island on the margins of the Greek world, and husband to the wise and faithful Penelope. While Achilles is the blazing comet of the Iliad, brilliant, short-lived, doomed by his own anger, Odysseus is the survivor, the man who endures and adapts. His story is not only about triumph, but about suffering, patience, and the long, hard road home. The ancient sources offer many glimpses of Odysseus before Homer's pen, or rather before the countless voices that made Homer. In some versions, he tries to escape the oath that binds the suitors, feigning madness by plowing his fields with salt. Only when his infant son Telemachus is placed in front of the plow does Odysseus relent, revealing his sanity and sense of duty. This story, found in later mythographers, already hints at the qualities that will define him: cleverness, reluctance to fight, and an underlying sense of responsibility. Throughout the Trojan War, Odysseus is both indispensable and ambiguous. He is not the mightiest, but he is the one to whom others turn in moments of crisis. He negotiates disputes, settles quarrels, devises plans. When Achilles withdraws from battle, it is Odysseus who leads the embassy to persuade him to return. When the Greeks falter, it is Odysseus who rallies the troops. In the night raids, the clandestine missions, the moments when cunning matters more than force, Odysseus shines. He is not above trickery or even cruelty. His treatment of Thersites, his dealings with the Trojans, his use of disguise and deception. Yet he is also a figure of empathy and eloquence, able to move gods and men with his words. The defining act of Odysseus at Troy, and the one that secures his fame, is the invention of the wooden horse. In this moment, strength gives way to guile, and war is won by brains, not brawn. The horse is a symbol of the ambiguous gifts Odysseus brings. It brings victory, but also destruction. It ends the war, but dooms a city. The Greek word for cunning, metis, is double-edged. It means intelligence, but also slyness, even deception. Odysseus is a hero for a complicated world, one in which truth and falsehood, loyalty and betrayal are often inseparable. In the Odyssey, Odysseus' heroism is tested in new ways. The world beyond Troy is a world of uncertainty. Monsters, witches, tempters, and tempests. He cannot rely on the rules of war or the codes of heroism that govern the battlefield. Instead, he must invent, adapt, and survive. Each episode becomes a test of his wits, outsmarting the Cyclops Polyphemus, resisting the seductions of Circe and Calypso, navigating the perils of Scylla and Charybdis, enduring the oblivion of the Lotus Eaters. Again and again, Odysseus wins by refusing to meet force with force. He is the ultimate pragmatist, always looking for the angle, the way out, the solution hidden from less agile minds. But this cunning comes at a cost. Odysseus's penchant for disguise, for concealment and storytelling, means that he is always, in some sense, in danger of losing himself. He is the hero who must remember who he is and be recognized by others to complete his journey. The theme of identity, of recognition and revelation runs through the epic, from his long silence in the court of the Phaeacians to the moments when his dog Argos and his nurse Euryclea know him, to the final, fraught recognition by Penelope. Odysseus is also a deeply human hero. He weeps, he suffers, he longs for home and for those he loves. He is vulnerable, even weak at times, dependent on the mercy of gods and mortals, at the mercy of the sea. His flaws are many: pride, impatience, curiosity, sometimes even cruelty. He is not always admirable, but he is always compelling. The gods in the Odyssey are often capricious, but it is the human qualities of endurance, resourcefulness, and hope that see Odysseus through. His relationship with Athena, his divine patron, is one of mutual respect and subtle guidance, a partnership between mortal ingenuity and divine wisdom. The complexity of Odysseus's character is reflected in the structure of the poem. He is both narrator and protagonist, telling his own story in the court of Alcinous, shaping his adventures as much by the way he tells them as by what he did. The audience is invited to question, to doubt, to wonder. Is Odysseus always truthful? Is he the victim of fate or the architect of his own destiny? The poem is a meditation on the power and the danger of story, on the ways in which we construct our own lives through the narratives we choose. For the Greeks, Odysseus was both an ideal and a problem. Some admired his cleverness, his ability to endure and adapt. Others distrusted his slyness, seeing him as untrustworthy, even dangerous. Later writers, especially in tragedy, would explore the darker side of his character. In Sophocles and Euripides, Odysseus can be ruthless, manipulative, a figure more of politics than of heroism. The Romans, for their part, were divided. Virgil's Aeneid casts Odysseus, Ulysses, as cunning but not always noble, a contrast to the pious Aeneas. Yet even in these reimaginings, the fascination remains, the hero who survives, who finds a way when others fall. The enduring power of Odysseus lies in his ambiguity. He is not perfect, not pure, not a simple emblem of virtue or strength. He is instead a mirror for the possibilities and limits of human nature. The world of the Odyssey is a world of change, where certainty is rare and adaptability is essential. In this, Odysseus is both ancient and modern, a hero for all ages, capable of reinventing himself and, by extension, the story in which he lives. The myth of Odysseus also speaks to the Greek understanding of fate and free will. The gods shaped the outlines of his journey, Poseidon's wrath, Athena's protection, Zeus's judgments. But within these bounds, Odysseus acts, chooses, suffers, and strives. His journey is not a straight line, but a labyrinth, a path marked by false starts, reversals, and lessons learned at great cost. The poem does not offer easy answers. It shows us a hero who must make his own way, forging meaning from chaos, hope from despair. The Odyssey's exploration of heroism is deeply psychological. Odysseus must confront not only external dangers, but his own desires, fears, and failings. The greatest obstacles are not always monsters or gods, but temptation, forgetfulness, and despair. His triumph is not to conquer the world, but to return home, to restore order and meaning to a life shattered by war and wandering. In later ages, Odysseus became a symbol of the restless spirit, the explorer, the exile, the seeker. Dante places him in the Inferno as a figure of overreaching ambition, punished for his unquenchable desire to know and to go beyond all limits. James Joyce, in Ulysses, recasts the ancient hero as Leopold Bloom, wandering through the streets of modern Dublin, searching for connection, meaning, and identity. The hero's journey has become the archetype for all who venture, all who strive to find a way through the uncertainties of existence. Yet, for all these later interpretations, the heart of Odysseus's story remains the same. The longing for home, the power of cunning and endurance, the necessity of self-knowledge. He is the hero who, in the face of overwhelming odds, refuses to give up. His story is a testament to the capacity of human beings to adapt, to survive, to remember, and to return. To consider the nature of the hero in the Odyssey is to ask, what makes a hero? Is it strength, courage, fame, or is it the ability to endure, to change, to find one's way through darkness and loss? The answer, as Homer gives it, is never simple. Odysseus is all these things and more, a man of many turns, a figure at once ancient and eternal, whose journey continues to inspire, to puzzle, and to invite us to embark on journeys of our own. In every great journey, there are moments that transcend geography, places not only where one turns left or right, but where the very self is tested and transformed. For Odysseus, many such trials lie ahead. But the earliest stages of his voyage from Troy offer more than just exotic lands and strange creatures. They offer encounters with the limits of human will, the fragility of civilization, and the enduring power of intellect over brute force. These are the episodes of the Lotus Eaters and the Cyclops, two of the most iconic passages in the Odyssey and two of the most revealing. After leaving the fallen city of Troy and suffering early setbacks at sea, Odysseus and his men land on the coast of the Lotus Eaters. The place is not overtly hostile. There are no monsters, no storms, no spears. Instead, there is a subtle, almost seductive tranquility. The local people offer the visitors a gift, the lotus flower. The men who eat it do not become ill, nor do they fall into danger. They forget. They forget their mission, their home, their very names. All desire to return to Ithaca dissolves in the dreamy sweetness of the lotus. This brief episode, only a few lines in the text, carries profound symbolic weight. The Lotus Eaters represent the danger of forgetting, of surrendering to pleasure at the expense of purpose. For a warrior culture built on fame, duty, and homecoming, the loss of memory is a form of death. In a world where survival often depends on vigilance and loyalty, the lotus is a drug that severs ties, numbs urgency, and dissolves identity. Odysseus, however, does not eat the flower. His will remains intact. Realizing what has happened to his men, he drags them back to the ship by force, ties them down, and sails away. It is an act not of compassion, but necessity. He will not allow his journey to be derailed by forgetfulness. In doing so, he establishes one of the central themes of the epic, the struggle to remember who one is, to resist the pull of apathy and dissolution. The hero's battle is not only against enemies, but against comfort, ease, and the seductive lie that there is no need to continue. The next trial is far more violent and far more famous. Sailing west, Odysseus and his men reach the land of the Cyclopes, a race of one-eyed giants who live in isolation without laws, agriculture, or communal structures. They dwell in caves, tend flocks, and recognize no authority save their own appetites. Odysseus, curious and driven by the Greek custom of xenia, hospitality, enters one of the caves with a group of men, hoping to exchange gifts and perhaps gain aid. But the Cyclops who owns the cave is Polyphemus, son of Poseidon, and he is no gracious host. When he returns and finds strangers eating his food, he does not welcome them. He imprisons them. He mocks the idea of hospitality, claiming he fears neither gods nor men, and proceeds to devour the intruders one by one. This is the first of many encounters in the Odyssey where Odysseus's cunning, rather than his strength, must be his salvation. Trapped inside the cave by a massive stone door, unable to fight the giant head-on, Odysseus begins to plan. First, he observes. He notes the schedule of Polyphemus, the layout of the cave, the resources available. Then he begins to deceive. He offers the Cyclops wine, strong, undiluted Greek wine, and earns the monster's trust. When asked his name, Odysseus replies, "Nobody." It is a masterstroke of strategy, setting up a moment of escape that relies not only on trickery, but on language itself. As the Cyclops falls into a drunken stupor, Odysseus and his men fashion a great wooden stake, heat it in the fire, and plunge it into the giant's single eye. Polyphemus awakens screaming, and when the other Cyclopes rush to help, he tells them, "Nobody is hurting me," and so they leave him to his torment. But escape is not yet secure. Odysseus must find a way out of the cave whose exit is still blocked. He ties his men beneath the bellies of Polyphemus's sheep, and when the blind giant lets the flock out in the morning, the Greeks go with them, hidden beneath the very creatures that Polyphemus nurtures. It is an act of survival that combines ingenuity with a deep understanding of his enemy's habits and nature, and yet, even in victory, Odysseus falters. As he sails away, safe at last, he cannot resist taunting his defeated foe. He reveals his true name, boasting of his triumph. This moment of pride, of hubris, proves costly. Polyphemus calls upon his father, Poseidon, to punish the man who blinded him. and so begins the long vendetta between Odysseus and the god of the sea, a divine grudge that will shape every storm, every delay, every loss that follows. The episode of Polyphemus is rich with meaning. It is a story about civilization and savagery, about the rules that bind communities together and the horrors that await outside them. The Cyclopes live without cities, without assemblies, without hospitality. They are self-sufficient, yes, but also isolated, lawless, monstrous. In many ways, they represent a fear of the outsider, the barbarian, the other. But they also pose a question: are the values of the Greeks, xenia, honor, cunning, universal, or are they simply another form of power? Odysseus, in this context, is both hero and intruder. He breaks into a home, eats another's food, and then uses deceit and violence to escape. His actions are justified by the threat he faces, but they are not simple. The line between survival and exploitation, between heroism and piracy, is thin. The poem does not resolve this ambiguity, it presents it, leaves it, and moves on. This complexity is what gives the Odyssey its enduring depth. The Lotus Eaters and the Cyclops are more than obstacles. They are reflections of the inner and outer dangers that threaten every journey. The loss of will, the abandonment of purpose, the rejection of shared values, these are as perilous as any monster or storm. And Odysseus, the hero who survives, does so not by brute force, but by mind, memory, and a relentless refusal to surrender. The test of cunning is also a test of identity. Odysseus must navigate not only the physical landscape of peril, but the moral landscape of choice. He must decide when to hide and when to reveal, when to act and when to wait. In a world ruled by gods and fate, his intelligence is his only true power, but it is not without risk. The same mind that saves him also leads him into pride, into error, into the long exile that follows. The tales of the Lotus Eaters and the Cyclops are early in the narrative, but they set the tone for everything that follows. They introduce us to the kind of hero Odysseus is, and the kind of world he inhabits. A world where the path home is never straight, where monsters are real, but so are desires, and where the greatest weapon is not a sword or a shield, but a sharp, observing, adaptive mind. These episodes also showcase Homer's mastery of tone and atmosphere. The dreamy danger of the Lotus Eaters stands in perfect contrast to the brutal immediacy of Polyphemus. One is seductive and slow, the other violent and loud. Together they show the range of threats Odysseus will face, and the emotional range of the poem itself. The Odyssey is not a monotone epic of glory, but a rich and varied tapestry of human experience. As Odysseus sails onward, deeper into the unknown, we are left with the enduring impression of a man who survives because he refuses to be simple. He is nobody and somebody, hero and trickster, wanderer and king. The road home is long not just in distance, but in the number of selves he must become and overcome before he can walk through the doors of his house once more. The Odyssey, as it unfolds, presents not a straight line, but a series of circles, approaches, and retreats, hopes raised and dashed, identities gained and lost. After surviving the near annihilation at the hands of Polyphemus, Odysseus and his men sail onward, battered but alive, seeking home, yet increasingly trapped in a cycle of temptation, betrayal, and divine interference. In this next sequence of trials, the encounter with Iolaus, the catastrophe of the Lastrygonians, and the enchantment of Circe, the journey becomes ever more precarious, testing not only Odysseus's cleverness, but his leadership, judgment, and resolve. The first stop after the Cyclopes brings Odysseus to the floating island of Aeolia, home of Aeolus, the god or king, depending on the version of the winds. This land is different from the lawless realm of Polyphemus. Here, civilization, hospitality, and divine favor seem to be in harmony. Aeolus welcomes Odysseus warmly, entertains him for a month, and then, in a gesture of trust and generosity, provides a gift of immense power. A bag containing all the adverse winds, leaving only the favorable breeze that will blow the ship straight to Ithaca. This is a moment of grace, an almost divine shortcut. Odysseus had all gone well, could have arrived at his homeland within days. He even glimpses the coast of Ithaca, the fires of home flickering in the distance. But the moment of return is snatched away, not by the gods, not by enemies, but by his own crew, driven by suspicion and greed. Believing the bag to contain treasure, they open it while Odysseus sleeps. The winds explode in a chaotic fury, and the ship is blown all the way back to Aeolia. This episode is a parable of leadership and trust. Odysseus, the cunning tactician, fails to manage the very human weaknesses of those he commands. His secrecy breeds distrust. His absence in a critical moment, sleeping while the gift is undone, signals a lapse in vigilance. The return to Aeolus is met with rejection. The god, realizing that Odysseus must be cursed by the immortals, refuses further aid. Divine favor, once lost, is hard to regain. And so the journey resumes, now under the shadow of missed opportunity and deepening exhaustion. Next landfall is far worse. Odysseus and his fleet arrive in the land of the Laestrygonians, a race of giant man-eating beings who appear, at first, to live in a well-organized society, complete with a harbor, a king, and a city. But this facade quickly collapses. As soon as the strangers are identified, the Laestrygonians attack. Odysseus's men are impaled, his ships destroyed by boulders hurled from the cliffs. Only Odysseus' own ship, which he had moored outside the harbor, escapes. This is the second great decimation of his fleet. First at the hands of Polyphemus, now at the hands of these violent giants. Odysseus is rapidly being stripped of his forces, his options, and his illusions. The Laestrygonian episode is swift and brutal, a nightmarish vision of hospitality turned hostile, of a seemingly civilized world revealed as savage. It serves as a dark mirror to the later lands, places like Phaeacia or Ithaca where order and hospitality will be restored. Here, though, the message is clear. The world is dangerous, and the line between friend and foe is often invisible until it is too late. From this horror, Odysseus and the remnants of his crew flee to the island of Aiaia, home of the enchantress, Circe. If the Lotus Eaters represented passive forgetting and the Cyclops brute violence and the Laestrygonians monstrous betrayal, then Circe offers something else entirely, a challenge of seduction, transformation, and ultimately, cooperation. The island is mysterious, lush, filled with signs of civilization and magic. Odysseus sends a scouting party to investigate. What they find is both terrifying and strangely alluring. Circe welcomes the men with food and drink, much like a gracious host would, except the drink is laced with enchantment, and the meal is a trap. With a touch of her wand, she transforms them into pigs. The symbolism is clear. Giving in to base desires, hunger, lust, carelessness, can strip one of humanity itself. Only one man, Eurylochus, escapes, running back to warn Odysseus. The hero prepares to confront Circe, but this time he receives divine help. Hermes appears, offering a magical herb, moly, that will protect him from her spell. When Odysseus confronts Circe, the tables turn. Immune to her magic, he draws his sword, ready to strike. Circe, stunned by resistance for the first time, surrenders, offering not only to restore his men, but to welcome them as guests. This transformation, from enemy to ally, from witch to lover, is one of the most intriguing. In the poem, Odysseus and his men remain on the island for a full year, feasting, resting, recovering. It is a moment of respite, but also of risk. The stay on Circe's island raises questions that go beyond mere adventure. Is this a paradise or a prison? Have the men regained their humanity, or merely traded one form of enchantment for another? Odysseus, who resisted the lotus, who outwitted Polyphemus, now willingly stays in the arms of a goddess, enjoying comfort while Ithaca waits. Is this wisdom or weakness? Eventually, urged by his men and his own longing, Odysseus decides to leave. But Circe has one more challenge. He must journey to the realm of the dead, to seek the prophecy of Tiresias, the blind seer, who alone can guide him home. This instruction marks a turning point. Up to now, Odysseus's trials have been external, battling monsters, navigating storms, surviving treachery. Now he must face the past, the dead, and his own place in the unfolding of fate. Circe, the enchantress, becomes a guide and teacher. Her character, so often simplified as villain or temptress, is in truth one of the poem's most complex. She rules her own domain, commands power, but also shows mercy and wisdom. Unlike Calypso, who clings possessively to Odysseus, Circe lets him go. Her island is a place of transformation, not only for the men turned back from pigs to men, but for Odysseus himself, who begins to transition from mere survivor to seeker of truth. Together, these three episodes, Aeolus, the Laestrygonians, and Circe, form a thematic arc. First comes the gift squandered by human weakness, then the brutal loss inflicted by external savagery, and finally, the deep trial of comfort and illusion, testing the very will to continue. Odysseus moves through them all, changed each time, wounded by failure, reduced in strength, but sharpened in will and knowledge. What also emerges is a portrait of leadership under pressure. Odysseus must constantly assess the risks, manage the fears of his men, and carry the weight of choices that often bring death or sorrow. His men are loyal, but also flawed, greedy, suspicious, impulsive. They are not demigods, they are human. And in the end, most will not survive. Odysseus, increasingly, is alone, burdened with memory, grief, and a purpose that remains painfully distant. The emotional complexity of these episodes adds to their resonance. There is tragedy in the bag of winds undone by foolishness, horror in the sudden senseless slaughter by the Laestrygonians, temptation and melancholy in Circe's golden halls. The Odyssey is not a celebration of triumph after triumph. It is a record of endurance, of error, of learning the hard way. But woven through all this is the enduring theme of the journey home. Not just to Ithaca, but to a self that can return. In these trials, Odysseus loses men, power, and certainty. But he gains perspective, foresight, and the slow-burning clarity that only those who have faced everything can possess. These episodes deepen the epic's emotional terrain, reminding us that heroism is not only about conquest, but also about surviving the days when everything seems lost. In every mythic journey, there is a moment when the hero must go down, into darkness, into silence, into the world beneath the world. For Odysseus, this moment comes not in battle or storm, but in the descent to the land of the dead. Sent by Circe to consult the prophet Tiresias, Odysseus must cross the threshold. No, living man should cross, not for glory, not for treasure, but for knowledge. This is no ordinary leg of the journey. It is the turning point. In the house of Hades, time collapses, and the living meet the dead. The past confronts the present, and the future is whispered in riddles and warnings. The passage begins with preparation. Circe, now ally and guide, instructs Odysseus in the rituals required to summon the spirits. He must sail to the edges of Oceanus, the river that encircles the earth. There, in the land of the Cimmerians, a people who never see the sun, he must dig a trench, make libations of milk, honey, wine, and blood. Only then will the dead come, drawn by scent and sacrifice, to speak to the living. This voyage to the underworld, or catabasis, has ancient roots. In Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and Near Eastern mythology, heroes and gods journey beneath the earth in search of wisdom, lost loved ones, or cosmic renewal. For the Greeks, the underworld was not hell, not a place of fire and punishment, but a shadow realm, a place of memory, loss, and silence. It was the destination of all souls, great and small, and to go there was to face the most profound of human truths, that all life ends and all stories are unfinished. As Odysseus and his men approach the shore, the atmosphere shifts. The world is colder, quieter, dimmer. There is no battle to fight, no monster to outwit. There is only the ritual, the trench, the waiting. And then the dead begin to arrive. Shades from every corner of Odysseus' past and from the world beyond, his knowing. The blood of the sacrifice gives them voice, for without it, the dead cannot speak. This is a world of silence unless summoned, a realm of truth that must be earned. The first to appear is Elpenor, a fallen comrade who died not in battle but in drunken clumsiness. He fell from Circe's roof. His plea is simple: a proper burial. Even in death, the rights of the body and the demands of memory must be honored. Elpenor's shade is a reminder that the hero's obligations extend beyond the living, and that the costs of carelessness follow, even beyond the grave. Then comes Tiresias, the blind prophet, holding his staff even in death, a figure both timeless and terrifying. He alone can see the future. From him, Odysseus hears what he most needs and fears to know. He will return to Ithaca, yes, but only with suffering. His men will perish. His journey will be long. When he arrives, he will find his home overrun by suitors. He must take vengeance. He must reclaim his place. But even after that, the journey will not end. He must make one final voyage inland, carrying an oar to a place where no one knows the sea. Only then, when he has made sacrifice to Poseidon, can his life truly come to peace. This prophecy changes everything. Until now, Odysseus has been struggling to survive. Now he understands that survival is only part of the story. There is destiny to fulfill, justice to restore, and debt to the gods to repay. Tiresias does not offer comfort. He offers clarity. The road home is no longer a dream. It is a responsibility. But the descent does not end with prophecy. One by one, the shades of the dead come forward. Anticlea, Odysseus's mother, whom he did not know, had died. Her presence breaks him. He cannot embrace her. 3 times he tries, and 3 times she slips through his arms like smoke. The boundaries of life and death are firm, and the grief of absence cannot be undone by will alone. From her he learns of the sorrow of Penelope, the struggles of Telemachus, the decay of Ithaca. The distance between him and his world grows more real, more painful. Other shades speak. The great women of myth and legend pass by: Tyro, Antiope, Alcmene, Epicaste, each telling stories of love, betrayal, and fate. The epic momentarily becomes a catalogue, not of battles, but of lineages, of women's voices, of the generational weight of memory. It is as though the dead line up to remind Odysseus and the audience of the continuity of human experience, the complexity of inheritance. Then come the heroes. Agamemnon, murdered by his wife and her lover upon returning home. He speaks not of glory, but of betrayal, of the dangers that wait even after the war is won. He warns Odysseus, "Trust no one, not even your wife." Odysseus listens, and the seed of suspicion is planted. Next comes Achilles, the greatest of the Greeks, whose wrath defined the Iliad. But now, in death, he offers no boasts, only regret. "I would rather be a servant to a poor man," he says, "than rule among the dead." It is one of the most famous lines in all of literature, a stark rejection of the heroic ideal. Achilles' voice cuts deep. All the glory, all the songs sung in his name are cold comfort in Hades. What matters, he says, is life, breath, family, the sun on your face. This revelation haunts the Odyssey. It casts doubt on the values of the war, the pursuit of fame, the cult of the hero. Odysseus is not Achilles. His journey is not toward glory, but toward reconnection, toward the fragile, flickering light of home. Ajax appears too, but will not speak. Still bitter over the contest for Achilles' armor, he turns away. Even in death, pride survives. The lesson is clear. Some wounds never heal, some rifts are never bridged. The dead are not made wise simply by dying. Finally, Odysseus sees the torments of the damned. Tydeus, Tantalus, Sisyphus, each punished in ways that have become proverbial. These are cautionary tales, reminders of the gods' justice, of the boundaries mortals must not cross. But they are also symbols. Sisyphus's eternal labor, rolling a stone up a hill only for it to fall again, is the image of futility. Yet even here, there is endurance. The stone rolls. The man returns. A kind of bitter heroism persists. The descent to the underworld ends not with triumph, but with terror. The souls begin to crowd around Odysseus, pressing closer, eager for blood, for voice, for memory. Fear grips him, and he flees. There is no final confrontation, no closure, only the understanding that life is finite, that the dead live on in stories, in grief, and in the obligations the living carry. Returning to Circe's island, Odysseus is no longer the same. He has faced death, memory, prophecy. He knows what awaits, and yet he continues. This is the turning point. The descent was not about answers, it was about recognition. To see the cost of choices, the reality of time, the power of fate. It is what Joseph Campbell and others have identified as the abyss stage of the hero's journey, the lowest point from which a new ascent must begin. The underworld in the Odyssey is not a place of punishment, but of insight. It is not a Christian hell, nor an idyllic afterlife. It is a gray, aching mirror where the dead live on in regret, in warning, in the memories of those who remain. Odysseus' journey there is not a detour. It is essential. It prepares him not just to reclaim his kingdom, but to understand what it means to be human. This episode is also remarkable for its emotional tone. Few moments in epic literature are as haunting, as quiet, as restrained. There is no shouting, no boasting, no bloodshed, only voices in the dark and the impossible longing to touch, to speak, to remember. Homer's genius is in the silences, the pauses, the sense of something vast and irretrievable just beyond the edge of light. As we follow Odysseus back toward the land of the living, we carry with us the weight of what he has seen. His journey is not yet over. Trials remain, but the descent has changed the terms. He now knows the future. He knows what he must do, and he knows the cost. Prophecy and fate in the Odyssey are not binding scripts. They are warnings, invitations to act with knowledge and care. The future is glimpsed, but not guaranteed. Odysseus must still choose, still strive, still suffer. The gods may declare, but the man must walk. In every great story, there is a moment when the hero touches the bottom of the world. For Odysseus, that moment is here, in the cold trench at the edge of Oceanus. But from it, he rises, not with more power, but with more understanding. Not a god, not a legend, but a man. Aware, awake, and carrying the voices of the dead toward the light of home. Having descended into the realm of the dead and returned, Odysseus now moves into the final arc of his voyage, a stretch of trials where the sea itself becomes a proving ground, not only for the strength of his leadership, but for the very discipline of his mind and the endurance of his will. These final trials, each rich with mythic symbolism and psychological intensity, are among the most famous in all literature. The Sirens, Scylla, and Charybdis, and the Cattle of the Sun test not just courage, but restraint. This is no longer the hero braving brute force or clever deception. This is the hero navigating fate, managing peril, and confronting the consequences of obedience and defiance. Before Odysseus and his crew depart from Circe's island for the last time, the enchantress becomes a counselor once more. Her guidance is no longer an attempt to delay or seduce, but to prepare. She warns him of what lies ahead. The sirens, whose song lures sailors to their deaths, the twin threats of Scylla, a six-headed monster, and Charybdis, a deadly whirlpool, and the sacred island of Thrinacia, where the immortal cattle of Helios graze, animals no man must touch. This foreknowledge marks a shift in the tone of the epic. The tests ahead are not surprise attacks or mysterious ambushes. They are foretold, explicit, inescapable. The first challenge is the sirens. These are not monstrous in appearance, but beautiful and alluring, creatures who sing knowledge and promise ecstasy to all who listen. Their power is not physical, but psychological. The ability to awaken desire, to lull the will, to make men forget their past and surrender to a timeless now. Odysseus, curious but cautious, devises a solution. He orders his men to plug their ears with beeswax, rendering them deaf to the siren's call. He, however, wishes to hear it. He has himself lashed to the mast, his ears open, his body bound. He instructs his crew that no matter how he begs or commands, they must not release him. This moment is more than a clever tactic. It is a profound image of self-mastery and duality. Odysseus does not flee temptation. He confronts it, deliberately, prepared, restrained. He divides his body from his will, his mind from his senses. It is the epic equivalent of reason holding fast against seduction. As the ship passes the Sirens' Island, he is overwhelmed with longing, screaming to be released, desperate to go to them. But his bonds hold. He survives not because he is strong, but because he has planned for weakness. The sirens represent the danger of knowledge unmoored from action, of beauty that paralyzes, of the ego's desire to be flattered and consumed. They promise that they will reveal all, that Odysseus will learn the secrets of the gods, the past and future, if only he comes closer. It is the temptation of ultimate insight, and in resisting it, Odysseus proves again that true wisdom is not the absence of temptation, but the ability to pass through it without surrendering. Next comes the strait of Scylla and Charybdis. Circe had warned him. He must choose the lesser of two evils. Scylla is a fixed danger, a monstrous being who lives in a cave on a cliff, reaching down with her 6 serpent-like necks to snatch men from passing ships. Charybdis, on the other side, is less visible but more total, a whirlpool that swallows the sea and all in it 3 times a day. Circe is clear. Try to avoid Charybdis and steer closer to Scylla. Odysseus will lose men, but not his ship. Attempt to fight fate or save all, and he will lose everything. Odysseus obeys. He does not warn his men. They might panic. He holds his course towards Scylla's lair, and when she strikes, 6 men are taken, screaming, torn from the deck. It is one of the most harrowing moments in the epic. Odysseus, helpless to save them, can only watch. His cleverness, his planning, his skill at deception, all are useless here. The cost of survival is sacrifice. This is not victory. It is loss measured and endured. Scylla and Charybdis are more than sea monsters. They are the twin perils of life, the obvious but limited danger and the hidden, total annihilation. They are the necessity of choosing between evils, the reality that not every decision has a clean or heroic outcome. In modern terms, it is the perfect metaphor for leadership under pressure, when every option leads to pain, and the only question is how much and for whom. Odysseus continues, but the worst is not behind him. The final trial before the end of the voyage is Thrinacia, the island of Helios, the sun god. Here, the cattle are sacred, watched by the daughters of the sun, and protected by divine wrath. Circe and Tiresias had been unambiguous. Do not touch them. Do not allow your men to harm them. If you do, destruction will follow. When they arrive, Odysseus repeats the warning. He insists they avoid the island altogether, but storms drive them to shore, and food supplies run low. For a month, the winds do not shift. Hunger turns to desperation. Odysseus prays to the gods and falls asleep. While he sleeps, his men, led by Eurylochus, kill and feast upon the cattle. This moment is the true nadir of the voyage. Odysseus is not just betrayed, he is absent. The disobedience of the men is both tragic and inevitable. They are starving, broken, lost. Eurylochus gives a fatalistic speech. Better to die at sea full-bellied than to starve slowly. The crime is committed not out of malice, but despair. But the gods are merciless. As the crew sets sail, Zeus hurls a lightning bolt at the ship, destroying it. Only Odysseus survives, clinging to driftwood, tossed once more into isolation. The island of Helios is more than just a divine trap. It is the final test of discipline, of the ability to endure deprivation without betraying the sacred. The cattle are not just animals. They are symbols of restraint, of the limits mortals must observe. The storm, the hunger, the long delay, they are provocations. The gods test not just strength, but will. And the crew, despite all they have seen and survived, fails. Odysseus' survival once again is solitary. Stripped of ship and crew, he floats to the island of Ogygia, where Calypso will hold him captive for 7 years. The story will pause here, the hero trapped in a strange twilight between life and stasis. But the trials at sea, the sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, Thrinacia, will linger. They are the essence of the Odyssey's moral world, not a world of simple choices, but of layered consequences, of tests that go beyond strength into the realm of character and fate. These trials are also deeply psychological. The sirens are the seduction of ego and insight. Scylla and Charybdis, the trauma of sacrifice. The cattle of the sun, the limits of control. Odysseus is at once leader and sufferer, planner and pawn. The sea in these passages becomes a theater of the human condition, where knowledge is not power but burden, where the best course may still lead to pain, where even heroes are at the mercy of winds, gods, and the folly of others. In the end, Odysseus passes through all three, not unscathed, but alive. He has learned, if not mastered, the art of enduring the inescapable. He knows now the difference between cleverness and wisdom, between command and responsibility. These trials strip him down, but they also prepare him. When he finally returns to Ithaca, it will be as a man transformed, not a warrior, but a survivor, tempered not by conquest, but by loss and understanding. The journey has moved beyond myth. It has become human. The monsters, the songs, the divine punishments, these are mirrors of the choices we all face. What to listen to, what to steer toward, what not to consume, what to let go. And in every choice, there is a price. Odysseus' voyage from Troy to Ithaca is far more than the distance between 2 points. It is the measure of what it takes to come home, not just across the sea, but across time, through memory, pain, and fate itself. The sea has tested him in every way. And now, as the waves carry him to his final captivity, he is ready, at last, for the long-awaited return. After surviving shipwreck, monsters, mutiny, and the wrath of gods, Odysseus finds himself not in his longed-for home of Ithaca, but on the island of Ogygia. It is a place untouched by the chaos of the world, lush and eternal, presided over by a goddess who offers not death, but something far more ambiguous: comfort, pleasure, and the temptation of permanence. Here, Odysseus is neither warrior nor wanderer. He is a guest, a prisoner, a kept man. The island is ruled by Calypso, the concealer, and her name is not accidental. This is a chapter of stillness, where the motion of the sea gives way to the slow erosion of identity by time. Ogygia is a paradise of sorts. Nature flourishes effortlessly, birdsong, blooming meadows, streams that flow crystal clear. Calypso herself is beautiful, immortal, powerful. She sings as she weaves at her loom, a figure of grace and serenity. She rescues Odysseus from the sea, nourishes him, offers him her bed. She offers even more: immortality if only he will stay. He will never grow old, never die. He will be her husband, and this island will be his forever. And yet Odysseus weeps. Every day he walks to the shore and stares at the horizon. He longs not for glory or battle or conquest, but for home, for Penelope, for the son he has not seen in 20 years. The paradox of Ogygia is sharp. It is a prison made of comfort, a trap formed of kindness. Calypso does not mistreat Odysseus. She does not enchant him as Circe did. She offers, pleads, tempts, but never chains. The chains are psychological, and for 7 years they hold. This chapter is a meditation on the cost of forgetting. It recalls the episode of the Lotus Eaters, but deepened. The danger now is not a drug or a song, but the slow seduction of stasis. Time passes differently here, if it passes at all. For Odysseus, each day is a repetition of grief, each night a reminder of what he has lost. And yet he does not act. His will is not broken, but it is stalled. The gods, however, have not forgotten him. On Mount Olympus, the divine council is held. Athena, ever loyal, speaks on Odysseus's behalf. Her argument is not rooted in sentiment but in justice. Has he not suffered enough? Has he not honored the gods, shown restraint, endured every hardship? Zeus, the father of gods and men, agrees. Hermes is dispatched to Ogygia with a message. Calypso must let him go. This moment marks a rare intervention in the mortal world, not of wrath, but of mercy. Calypso is furious, not at Odysseus, but at the injustice she perceives. She, a goddess, is told by the male gods what she may or may not do. She points out that male gods take mortal lovers freely, without consequence. But when a goddess does the same, she is punished, scorned, forced to relinquish her claim. Her anger is not unjustified. In this scene, Homer gives voice to the frustration of the immortal feminine, a critique that transcends time. Nevertheless, Calypso obeys. She tells Odysseus the news and offers him freedom. Yet even now, she challenges him. Is Penelope really more beautiful than I? Odysseus answers with tact. You are beautiful, more beautiful than words can say. But she is mortal, and she is mine. It is not a rejection of Calypso's power, but an affirmation of the human scale. Home, with all its flaws and limits, is worth more than paradise without purpose. Odysseus builds a raft. Calypso provides tools, provisions, and even favorable winds. There is no anger, only a quiet resignation. She watches as he departs, the ocean once again stretching before him, vast and indifferent. Her island disappears behind him, a golden cage left behind. This departure is unlike the others in the poem. There is no rush, no escape. It is a choice, a final reaffirmation of identity. Odysseus is not a demigod. He is not seeking immortality. He is a man, and men belong in the world of limits, aging, memory, and love. The raft he sails is not just a vessel, it is a symbol of agency reclaimed. After years of drift and delay, he moves once more under his own direction. But the sea, governed still by Poseidon's wrath, will not let him go so easily. As he sails, the god returns from distant lands and sees Odysseus nearing escape. Enraged, he summons a storm that shatters the raft and sends Odysseus plunging into the waves once again. He is no longer protected. His crew is gone. The gods are divided. He is alone. What follows is one of the most vivid survival scenes in ancient literature. Odysseus, clinging to the wreckage, battered by waves, prays and curses, gasps and struggles. Death is close, but another divine aid arrives. In the form of Ino, a sea goddess who offers him a veil to keep him afloat. She instructs him to abandon the wreckage, to trust the sea, to swim. It is a moment of choice again. Trust in reason and cling to the raft, or surrender to divine counsel and risk the unknown. Odysseus hesitates. His instinct is to hold on, but eventually he lets go. He swims. The sea punishes him, flings him against rocks, tries to drown him. He suffers, but he endures. He washes up at last on the shores of Scheria, land of the Phaeacians, exhausted, naked, asleep beneath a pile of leaves. His raft is gone, his weapons, his crew, his dignity, all stripped away. What remains is Odysseus himself, a soul tested by gods and fate, unbroken. The episode of Calypso and the gods' intervention is pivotal, not only in the narrative arc but in the moral architecture of the epic. It shows that endurance must sometimes give way to action, that comfort can be a cage, that divine favor may be offered, but never indefinitely. It also illustrates that freedom, even from kindness, must be earned, seized, and borne with all its consequences. Calypso's island is not just a place, it is a state of being. It is the part of every journey where one is tempted to stop, to settle, to abandon the road in favor of rest. Many heroes never leave it. Odysseus does, and that decision affirms everything he has become and will become. Bestia gods, meanwhile, are shown not as distant puppeteers but as forces of influence, opinion, and occasional compassion. Athena's persistence, Zeus's justice, Hermes' efficiency, Ino's unexpected kindness, all counterbalance the fury of Poseidon. The divine realm in the Odyssey is not wholly merciful, but it is not wholly cruel. It reflects the ambiguities of the human world it oversees. This portion of the epic is quieter, more contemplative than the trials that came before. There are no monsters, no enchantments, no dramatic deceptions. Instead, it is about internal struggle, the choice to act, the refusal to be contained, the strength to leave what is easy in pursuit of what is right. It is the hero's rebirth, not with fanfare but with quiet resolve. And so the story turns. Odysseus, who once rode with kings and commanded fleets, is now a lone man on foreign shores, yet he is closer to home than ever. He has passed through every elemental trial, land, underworld, sea, and now arrives at the last phase, the rediscovery of self and the reconquest of the life that was stolen. Odysseus has been stripped of everything. No ship, no crew, no weapons, no clothes. He lies asleep under a bed of olive leaves on the unfamiliar shore of Scheria, his body bruised, his spirit exhausted. He is a hero in name only, his grandeur washed away by the sea. And yet it is in this state, naked, vulnerable, anonymous, that Odysseus enters one of the most civilized and refined societies of the epic, the land of the Phaeacians. This episode, often overlooked amid the tales of monsters and gods, is one of the most important in the Odyssey. It is a meditation on culture, storytelling, and the sacred practice of hospitality, xenia, that undergirds the Greek moral world. Scheria is ruled by King Alcinous and Queen Arete, whose court represents an idealized vision of civilized life. The Phaeacians are known for their love of the arts, their skilled seamanship, and their generosity to strangers. Their island is one of peace and prosperity, a kind of utopia at the far edge of the world. They do not know war. They are favored by the gods. And into this harmony stumbles a stranger, shipwrecked and unknown, with no introduction or escort. How they treat him and how he responds will shape the final arc of the story. Odysseus's first encounter is not with kings or warriors, but with a young woman, Nausicaa, the daughter of Alcinous. She appears in a dream sent by Athena, who instructs her to wash clothes at the river the next morning. There, she discovers Odysseus, disheveled, covered in brine, wild with desperation. The moment is delicate. He does not rush to her. He approaches with tact, choosing not to touch her knees in the traditional gesture of supplication. Instead, he speaks with measured humility, comparing her to Artemis, praising her wisdom, asking for help without assumption. Nausicaa responds not with fear or disgust, but with grace. She gives him clothes, food, and directions to the palace, but warns him not to walk with her into town, to avoid gossip and scandal. Her poise and intelligence mark her as a model of virtue and nobility. In Nausicaa, Homer offers an image of youth that is strong without arrogance, generous without naivety. She represents a threshold between wildness and civilization, impulse and order. Odysseus follows her instructions and enters the palace of Alcinous as a supplicant. He throws his arms around the queen's knees, a traditional plea for protection, and says nothing of his identity. This silence is not cowardice, it is strategy. Odysseus knows that names carry weight, that stories can open doors or close them. He waits, allowing the Phaeacians to reveal themselves first. The response is immediate and generous. Alcinous raises Odysseus from the ground, welcomes him, feeds him, no questions asked. This is Xenia at its finest. The stranger is treated as sacred, a potential emissary of the gods. Only after he has eaten, bathed, and rested do the Phaeacians begin to ask who he is. Even then, the tone is respectful, never intrusive. The Phaeacians then host games and feasts in Odysseus's honor. He is invited to compete, to sing, to tell his tale. But at first, he refuses to reveal himself. He remains the stranger, the unshorn guest. This anonymity creates suspense, but it also reflects a deeper truth. Odysseus is still becoming. He is not yet ready to reclaim his name, not until he understands who he is after all he has endured. A pivotal moment comes with the bard Demodocus. At the feast, Demodocus sings of the Trojan War, of the wooden horse, the sack of the city, the victory won by trickery. As he hears his own story told by another, Odysseus begins to weep. He tries to hide it, but Alcinous sees. The tears are not of joy or pride, but of pain. For the first time, we witness the emotional cost of the myth. Odysseus is not just a legend, he is a man haunted by memory, loss, and guilt. Alcinous, moved, finally presses him to speak. "Who are you?" he asks. "Where are you from? What is your story?" And here, Odysseus begins to tell. Over the course of several books, he recounts his journey. The Cicones, the Lotus Eaters, the Cyclops, Aeolus, Circe, the underworld, the Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, the cattle of the sun, and the long years with Calypso. It is a masterclass in narrative, vivid, ordered, suspenseful. He shapes his tale with care, emphasizing his suffering, his cleverness, his longing for home. This performance is more than confession. It is a reclaiming of identity. By telling his story, Odysseus becomes Odysseus again, not just to the Phaeacians, but to himself. It is a ritual of remembrance, a binding of the fractured pieces of experience into a coherent self. In the ancient world, to have a name and a story was to be real. To be anonymous was to be unmoored, exiled even from memory. The Phaeacians, in turn, are moved. They promise to take him home, to provide a ship, a crew, and a treasure worthy of a king. Their generosity is complete. They do not question, hesitate, or bargain. They honor the sacred contract of hospitality, and in doing so, they fulfill the divine plan. Their ship carries Odysseus across the final leg of his voyage, not through storm and struggle, but through still, quiet water. He sleeps as they row. For once, he arrives without resistance, without loss. And yet, this act of kindness incurs divine wrath. Poseidon, still enraged, punishes the Phaeacians. As their ship returns home, he turns it to stone and threatens to shroud their harbor forever. Zeus allows him to punish them, but only within limits. The episode ends with ambiguity. Hospitality brings blessing, but also danger. To help the cursed man is noble, but not without cost. The episode of the Phaeacians serves many functions. In the Odyssey, it is the narrative frame through which the bulk of Odysseus' adventures are told. It is a mirror of Ithaca, a peaceful, ordered kingdom where honor and family are prized. It is a final test of Odysseus' ability to enter society, to present himself, to claim his past. And it is a meditation on Xenia, hospitality, not as a quaint custom, but as a cornerstone of civilization. Hospitality, in Homer's world, is not optional. It is sacred, binding gods and mortals in a web of mutual responsibility. A stranger is a guest. A guest is almost divine. To honor that bond is to uphold the moral fabric of the world. To violate it, as the suitors in Ithaca have, is to invite destruction. The Phaeacians embody the ideal. The suitors will embody its opposite. Odysseus, caught between these poles, must now bring justice back to his own home. But before he does, he must remember himself. The story told to the Phaeacians is the story of a man who has suffered, changed, adapted, endured. By speaking it aloud, Odysseus prepares himself for what comes next, not only the confrontation with the suitors, but the final reintegration into the life he left behind. He is no longer just a wanderer. He is a man who knows his story and is ready to finish it. The arrival in Scheria and the warm welcome he receives mark a brief return to harmony before the storm of vengeance and justice begins. It is a pause, a reprieve, a moment of grace. It reminds us that even in a world of gods and monsters, there is space for kindness, for listening, for the power of stories told and heard. The Phaeacians are not warriors. They are navigators, builders, dancers, singers. They embody another kind of excellence, cultural, emotional, civic. They are, in a way, the best of what civilization can offer. And so, as Odysseus falls asleep, on their ship, sailing the last stretch of sea between exile and home, he carries not only his name and his wounds, but the gifts of civilization, story, song, welcome, and the power of being known. When he wakes, it will be on the soil of Ithaca, but he will not yet be Odysseus the king. Not yet. One final set of trials remains. But for now, the journey is whole, and the hero has spoken his truth. Odysseus awakens to silence. The ship of the Phaeacians has vanished, and the quiet waves of Ithaca lap against the shore. For 20 years he has dreamed of this moment, yet home does not recognize him, and he does not recognize home. There are no banners, no feasting halls, no trumpets of return. Only a beach, a cave, and the whisper of olive trees swaying in the wind. Ithaca, his kingdom, lies just beyond the hills, but the man who has returned is not the man who left. What Odysseus finds is a land in decay. His house has become a den of parasites. The suitors, more than 100 strong, have taken over his halls, consuming his flocks, drinking his wine, and courting his wife with arrogant confidence. They believe Odysseus dead, and in his absence, they treat his estate as spoils of war. Penelope, faithful and wise, delays them with cunning, promising to choose a husband once she finishes weaving a shroud for Odysseus's father, Laertes. By night she unravels what she wove by day. But time is running out. The suitors grow impatient. The law is weak. The future is uncertain. Telemachus, Odysseus's son, now a young man, is caught in the tension between inaction and inheritance. He knows only the stories of his father. His voice is unsteady, his authority fragile, yet he begins to act. With Athena's guidance, he has traveled to Pylos and Sparta seeking news of Odysseus. He has learned the names and stories of heroes, begun to step into the shadow of his father. But he returns to Ithaca still unarmed against the political and personal threat within his own home. Into this chaos comes Odysseus, but not in glory. Athena, his divine patron, advises caution. She disguises him as a beggar, an old man with torn clothes, a walking staff, and the scars of life etched across his skin. He must move through his own kingdom unseen, to observe, to assess, to reclaim not only his throne, but the knowledge of who remains loyal and who has betrayed him. This return in disguise is no accident. It is a test, not only of others, but of himself. Can he endure humiliation? Can he remain silent while dogs snap at him, while servants jeer, while suitors insult him at his own table? This is no longer a story of monsters and spells. It is a story of human character, arrogance, greed, fidelity, courage. Odysseus must judge each soul before revealing his own. One of the first to show loyalty is Eumaeus, the swineherd. a humble man, poor but principled. When the beggar arrives at his hut, Eumaeus does not know him, but he offers food, shelter, respect. His speech is filled with grief for his lost master, with praise for Penelope, with contempt for the suitors. He honors the unwritten laws of hospitality, even in his own suffering. In Eumaeus, Homer presents the idea that nobility resides not in blood, but in behavior. Eumaeus's role is more than moral. He becomes Odysseus's first ally in the silent war to come. Through him, Odysseus learns of Ithaca's condition, the sentiments of the people, the disposition of the suitors. He also reconnects to a part of himself, the rural, earthy, loyal foundations of his kingship. Eumaeus represents the Ithaca that has endured quietly in the shadows. Next comes the reunion with Telemachus, orchestrated by Athena. Father and son, separated for 2 decades, now meet not as legend and child, but as men. At first, Telemachus does not recognize the beggar, but when Odysseus reveals himself, through a transformation guided by Athena, his son is overwhelmed. There are tears, embraces, disbelief turned to certainty. It is one of the most emotionally charged moments in the epic. For Odysseus, who has lost so much, this is a glimpse of redemption. For Telemachus, it is the arrival of a role model, a leader, a father whose absence defined his life. Together, they begin to plan. But before the final reckoning, there are more loyalties to test. Odysseus, still in disguise, makes his way to the palace. There he witnesses firsthand the decay of his home. The suitors mock him, abuse him, treat him as less than human. Antinous, the most arrogant among them, strikes him with a stool, an act that shocks even the others. Yet Odysseus does not retaliate. He endures. He watches. He calculates. Each insult, each betrayal, is another nail in the coffin of their fate. Among the household, some remain faithful. Euryclea, the old nurse who raised him, recognizes him by the scar on his leg, received in a boar hunt in his youth. Her recognition is silent, her loyalty immediate. She agrees to keep his secret. Penelope, though she does not yet know who he is, feels a strange pull toward the beggar, as if sensing the presence of something lost but not forgotten. The bond between husband and wife, though strained by years and silence, remains intact beneath the surface. Penelope's character in this section shines. She is no passive wife. She is intelligent, strategic, dignified. She challenges the suitors, commands the respect of the household, and maintains her resolve through grief and pressure. Her fidelity is not merely romantic, it is political, existential. In her, the very soul of Ithaca survives. The court of Odysseus has become a battlefield, not of swords, but of words, of hospitality, of respect. Every gesture, every insult, every kindness or cruelty is part of the final accounting. The beggar tests his servants. Some are kind, others mock or ignore him. Each response is noted. Justice will come, but only for those who deserve it. What unfolds is a portrait of a kingdom without its king. The laws have eroded. The traditions are twisted. Power is taken, not earned. But loyalty, quiet and steadfast, endures in pockets, in Eumaeus, in Telemachus, in Euryclea, in Penelope. These figures are the foundation on which Ithaca can be rebuilt. Odysseus's restraint is remarkable. He bides his time. He allows himself to suffer indignity. He withholds revelation, trusting that the moment will come. This is not the Odysseus of Troy who charged into battle. This is the matured hero who has learned that endurance is often more powerful than attack. His journey has tempered him. He is no longer seeking only to reclaim a throne, but to restore order. And when the moment comes, when Penelope announces the contest of the bow, the trial of strength that only her true husband can win, it is not a battle of armies, but a moment of truth. But before that contest, before the string is drawn and the arrow fired, there is still silence, still shadows. Odysseus, in his own house, waits to be recognized, and the world waits to see what justice will look like when the stranger becomes king once more. This phase of the story, Odysseus in Ithaca but not yet restored, adds a layer of psychological complexity to the epic. The tension is no longer external. It is internal, social, political. The war is over, but the kingdom has not healed. The suitors represent the dangers of entitlement and lawlessness. The loyal few are the seeds of restoration, and through it all, Odysseus walks quietly, watching. The king in exile, the hero in rags, the master of many disguises, now using silence as his weapon. For days, Odysseus has walked among the ruins of his former life, unseen beneath the disguise of an old beggar. He has endured taunts and violence from the suitors, kept his identity hidden even from those he loves, and watched as his house teeters between chaos and memory. But now, the moment approaches. The long-awaited reckoning begins, not in a sudden explosion, but in a careful orchestration of symbols, silence, and strategy. The return of Odysseus is not a single act, but a layered unfolding of reunion, of revelation, and of justice dealt with mortal finality. The stage is set by Penelope. Having suffered the suitor's presence for years, she proposes a contest, an impossible one, in theory. She brings forth Odysseus's great bow, a gift of his youth, carved and strung to match his singular strength. The challenge: string the bow, then shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads aligned in a row. She promises to marry the man who can do it, thereby ending the long siege of her hand. This is more than a test of strength. It is a ritual of restoration. The bow, long untouched, is a symbol of the rightful king. No other can string it. It is, effectively, a divine key, one that only Odysseus can wield, even after 20 years of war, wandering, and grief. In proposing the contest, Penelope walks a narrow path between faith and resignation. Whether she knows the beggar's true identity is left ambiguous, but her challenge brings the truth to the surface. One by one, the suitors try and fail. Their pride cracks. They grumble and curse, blaming the bow, the gods, each other. Some suggest postponement. Others panic. None suspect that the man who watches silently from the shadows is more than he appears. Then Odysseus, still in disguise, asks to try. The suitors mock him, enraged at the insult. Antinous, chief among them, nearly forbids it. But Penelope intervenes, supported by Telemachus. The beggar is allowed to hold the weapon. He takes the bow in his hands and inspects it with care, like a harpist tuning a stringed instrument. The imagery is deliberate. He is not a brute, but an artist. With ease and silence, he strings the bow. The room stills. Then, as if to confirm the inevitable, he sends an arrow cleanly through the axes. In this instant, the beggar disappears. Odysseus stands revealed, not through magic or divine transformation, but through action. The disguise has dropped, the mask lifted, the king returned. His first act is swift and irrevocable. He turns the bow on Antinous and fires. The arrow strikes the throat of the man mid-sip of wine. He dies before he can react. Panic erupts. The suitors scramble, but the doors are locked. Odysseus declares himself. There is no ambiguity now. Justice has come. What follows is not a duel. It is a slaughter. With Telemachus, Eumaeus, and the loyal cowherd Philoetius at his side, Odysseus systematically kills every one of the suitors. Athena intervenes to deflect spears and encourage courage. The violence is total. The transgressors of hospitality, the abusers of law and honor, are given no quarter. The room is transformed from a banquet hall to a battlefield. The imagery echoes the war at Troy, but now the violence is personal, immediate, intimate. Odysseus reclaims not only his house but the moral order of his kingdom. The chaos within is purged. After the suitors fall, attention turns to the servants who betrayed their master. Disloyal maids are ordered to clean the blood-soaked hall, then are hanged. The goat-herd Melanthius, who sided with the suitors, is mutilated. The justice is severe. Modern readers often recoil at its harshness, but in Homeric terms, this is the restoration of balance. Order demands retribution. The house, once desecrated, must be purified. But victory is not enough. There remains one more test, one more soul to convince. Penelope. She descends from her chambers, summoned by the commotion. She sees the bodies, the gore, the man who claims to be her husband. And yet she does not run to him. She stands still, reserved, skeptical. This is no romantic reunion. Penelope has endured too much, waited too long, suffered too deeply to accept without proof. Odysseus, for all his cunning and courage, is stunned. He pleads, he affirms. Telemachus begs her to believe, but she does not until she devises one final test. She instructs Euryclea to move the marital bed into another room. Odysseus reacts instantly. "No one can move that bed," he says. He built it himself, around a living olive tree, rooted into the earth. The bed is immovable, unless destroyed. Only he would know that. Penelope's defenses fall. She weeps, she embraces him. Recognition blooms, not through appearance or voice, but through shared knowledge, shared history, shared life. This is not the reunion of fantasy. It is real, earned, imperfect. They speak, they weep, they remember. They do not rush into bed, they talk, they recount their suffering. They mourn the years lost. They speak of trials yet to come. This is not a fairy tale ending. It is the resumption of a marriage paused by war, delayed by fate, and now cautiously resumed in the shadows of blood and sorrow. The motif of disguise and recognition, so central to the Odyssey, reaches its peak here. Odysseus is known not by his face, but by his deeds. Penelope is not won by appearance, but by truth. The bond between them is not one of fantasy, but of deep, hard-earned mutual understanding. They are not the same people who parted 20 years earlier, but they remain bound by love, by memory, by endurance. This portion of the epic is, in many ways, the moral heart of the poem. Odysseus's return is not a triumphant parade. It is a difficult, deliberate confrontation with what time has done. The kingdom he reclaims is not glorious, but damaged. The people he loves are wary. The justice he enacts is not clean. It is bloody, painful, controversial, but it is necessary. And he does not stop here. Odysseus must still prove himself to others. He must visit his father, Laertes. He must contend with the families of the slain. Peace must be restored, not only by force, but by wisdom. Athena will intervene again, and Zeus will bless the final reconciliation. But none of that matters unless he can first reclaim his name inside his own house. The story of the Odyssey is not one of conquest, but of return. And return is never simple. It is the most human of stories. The longing to come home, the struggle to be recognized, the challenge of reintegrating after trauma and loss. Odysseus' disguise was not just physical, it was emotional, existential. He could not reveal himself until he was certain that what he returned to was real, enduring, worthy. And Penelope, for all her patience and sorrow, is no passive prize. Her final test confirms that recognition must be mutual. The bed built around. The olive tree is more than furniture. It is a symbol of rootedness, of a love that grew into the earth itself, unmovable, hidden, waiting. When she names it, she names him. When he describes it, he describes her. Their reunion is not fiery or passionate. It is quiet, sacred, almost fragile. It reminds us that love, like identity, is something that must be proved, reclaimed, and held with care. The revenge of Odysseus, though necessary in the world of the poem, is not its climax. The reunion is. And that reunion is not built on spectacle or victory, but on a shared secret, a bed that cannot be moved, and the silent, stubborn fidelity of two people who waited for time to pass, for gods to relent, for justice to be done. The bow has been strung, the arrow has flown. The blood of the suitors stains the floors of Odysseus's hall, and the tyrants who once devoured his goods and mocked his house lie in silence. Yet this is not the end, not of the poem, and not of the journey. For the Odyssey is not merely a tale of revenge, but a deeper meditation on restoration. After chaos comes the question, how do we live again? After justice, what space remains for forgiveness? The final phase of Odysseus's return is not marked by blades or boasts, but by the slower, harder work of peace. The night of the slaughter passes. Within the palace walls, silence settles. Odysseus and Penelope, newly reunited, speak of pain and memory, of gods and trials, of the long road that brought them together again. Sleep comes only after truth. But outside the palace, the world stirs. Dawn brings consequences. The families of the suitors learn of their sons' deaths. Some were innocent in their daily lives, farmers, nobles, craftsmen, but now their bloodlines are broken. Grief turns to fury. Justice, from one angle, becomes murder from another. The fathers of the dead gather in outrage. Eupeithes' father, of Antinous the first slain, becomes their voice. They call for retribution, and yet, even here, Homer does not simplify. The text offers no universal condemnation, no suggestion that all the suitors were evil or their families unworthy. Instead, it shows us a cycle, the ancient wheel of vengeance that turns blood into more blood, loss into renewed conflict. Ithaca, once under threat from within, now risks tearing itself apart from without. Odysseus, anticipating this, does not stay to savor his triumph. Instead, he departs the city to find his father, Laertes, aged, grieving, living in voluntary exile on a farm beyond the town. Their reunion is gentle, filled with memory and hesitation. Laertes does not recognize his son at first. Odysseus, ever the trickster, tests him with another tale, another layer of disguise. But at last, he reveals the scar, his mark of identity, and embraces the man who taught him what it meant to rule, to endure, to plant trees whose fruits he might never live to enjoy. This moment with Laertes serves as more than a reunion. It is the restoration of lineage. Odysseus reconnects the broken chain of fathers and sons, of inheritance and belonging. He honors the past not with monuments or armies, but with presence. It is a quiet, intimate act, but one with vast symbolic weight. Ithaca cannot be ruled by a man who does not remember where he came from, but the threat from the suitors' families still looms. Armed and angry, they approach. Odysseus, Telemachus, Laertes, and their few loyal allies prepare to defend what has just been reclaimed. The kingdom teeters again, poised between another battle, another round of suffering, or something else entirely. It is here that Athena, the guiding force throughout the poem, steps in decisively. Disguised as mentor, she intervenes to halt the bloodshed. But it is Zeus himself who sends the final word. There must be peace. The gods, having allowed vengeance to run its course, now demand an end to the cycle. Athena, with divine authority, compels both sides to lay down arms. She wipes the memory of the slaughter from the minds of the suitors' kin, an act that, though mythic in form, speaks to a deeper truth. Sometimes peace is only possible when we forget, or choose not to remember too sharply. The war ends not with a speech or treaty, but with a divine command. Odysseus, the warrior king, agrees. So do the Ithacans. The sword is sheathed, the kingdom is healed. At least, enough to begin again. The ending of the Odyssey is unusual by modern standards. It doesn't revel in victory, it doesn't indulge in extended celebration. Instead, it lingers on the idea that restoration is incomplete. without reconciliation. Justice must be done, but not endlessly. Vengeance has its limits. For peace to hold, there must be mercy. Not because everyone deserves it, but because without it, the world cannot go on. This return to peace is the final trial of Odysseus, to put aside the bow, the blade, the need for control, and to lead not through force, but through presence. He has returned. He has reclaimed. Now he must rebuild. And what does rebuilding mean? In the Odyssey, it is less about palaces or politics than about relationships. Odysseus is once again a son, a father, a husband, a king. But each of these roles must be earned anew. His reunion with Penelope is not the end. It is the beginning of a marriage resumed. His connection with Telemachus is not a matter of blood, but of guidance, patience, legacy. His throne is not restored by decree, but by humility, recognition, and the ability to listen. Even the gods, for all their power, step back. Athena's final act is to restore order, but then she departs. The divine has shaped the story, but it is humans who must live it. This restraint reflects a mature theology. The gods are present, but not always clear. Powerful, but not always merciful. In the end, the Odyssey is not about divine justice, but human responsibility. Odysseus's journey, so filled with dangers and delays, has returned him not to a place, but to a balance between cunning and wisdom, between strength and restraint, between memory and forgetting. The poem, too, has come full circle. It opened with Telemachus searching for a father and ends with a father found. It began in a kingdom under siege and ends with order restored. But nothing is exactly as it was. Time has passed, losses have mounted, innocence is gone, and yet something deeper remains, the capacity to begin again. The Odyssey does not conclude with transcendence. It does not seek perfection. It offers instead a deeply human resolution. Peace not as a reward, but as a fragile agreement. Home not as paradise, but as the place where we are known. Identity not as destiny, but as something built and rebuilt through memory, suffering, and love. Odysseus' return is, in the end, a return to life itself, with all its compromise, beauty, duty, and quiet triumphs. The journey is over, but the living begins. In a poem filled with gods, monsters, warriors, and wanderers, it is perhaps surprising that one of its most complex and enduring figures never leaves the palace, never lifts a sword, never sets foot on a battlefield. Penelope, queen of Ithaca, wife of Odysseus, is not only the moral anchor of the Odyssey, but one of its most subtle and powerful agents of change. Her strength lies not in confrontation, but in endurance, not in conquest, but in constancy. And yet her role is far more than that of a passive, patient wife. Penelope is a strategist, a skeptic, a judge, and, perhaps most importantly, a woman who survives by her wits in a world that constantly seeks to control or consume her. Penelope's story is, at first glance, a tale of waiting. For 20 years, she endures Odysseus's absence, first during the decade-long Trojan War, and then during the additional decade of wandering that follows. During this time, she becomes the target of relentless pressure. Suitors invade her home, consume her husband's wealth, and demand her hand in marriage. Her son is too young to challenge them. The laws offer little protection. In a patriarchal society where women were often traded and silenced, Penelope holds her ground. She does so not by force, but by intellect. Her most famous act of resistance is the weaving and unweaving of a burial shroud for Laertes, Odysseus's elderly father. She promises the suitors she will choose one of them when the shroud is complete. Every day she weaves it. Every night in secret she unweaves it. For 3 years this cycle continues, a quiet act of rebellion that outwits more than 100 men. It is not merely a delay tactic. It is a metaphor for her control of time, of narrative, of hope. She spins her own story, thread by thread, literally and figuratively. Eventually, the ruse is discovered. The pressure intensifies. Yet Penelope does not break. She shifts strategies. She begins to test the suitors, to observe them more closely, to gather information. In this, she mirrors Odysseus himself, always calculating, always withholding. Her silence is not ignorance, it is observation. Her indecision is not weakness, it is precision. Like her husband, she survives through disguise, through the careful concealment of knowledge. When Odysseus returns in disguise, Penelope becomes both his final test and his mirror. She does not recognize him by face. Too many years have passed. Too many impostors have come and gone. But she does not trust him either. She probes, watches, questions. She listens. Her cautious interaction with the beggar reveals a woman trained, by sorrow to distrust hope. Her final test, the secret of the immovable bed, is often read as a mere proof of identity. But it is more than that. It is a symbolic safeguard. The bed, rooted in a living olive tree, represents their marriage, their shared history, their home. It is the one object that cannot be faked, forged, or moved. By referencing it, Odysseus reveals himself not only in fact but in feeling. He remembers, and Penelope, hearing that memory spoken aloud, recognizes not just her husband, but their bond. The bed is not a throne. It is not a weapon. It is domestic, intimate, living. And in Homer's world, it is perhaps the most sacred of all symbols. Through all this, Penelope is never sentimentalized. She is dignified but pragmatic, emotional but guarded. Her suffering is real, but never renders her helpless. She has raised a child alone, managed a kingdom without a king, and defended herself, psychologically, politically, emotionally, against a siege of entitled men. In literary terms, Penelope is a rare figure, a female character in epic who is neither a victim nor a divine seductress, neither a prize nor an obstacle. She is a person, a mind, a force. Her intelligence is not showy, but it is consistent and exacting. Her fidelity is not blind devotion, it is informed by wisdom and choice. Some scholars and storytellers have debated Penelope's motivations. Was her recognition of Odysseus delayed out of caution or disbelief? Was she truly as passive as some interpreters suggest, or was her control more profound for being subtle? These questions reflect the richness of her character. Penelope resists. Simple definition. Like her husband, she is a figure of ambiguity, of shifting masks, of emotional depth that exceeds the roles assigned to her. Importantly, the Odyssey treats Penelope not as a mere extension of Odysseus, but as his counterpart. She is the other side of the journey, not the path through war and monsters, but the path through memory, silence, and loss. While Odysseus fights to return, Penelope fights to keep something alive: hope, dignity, identity, in his absence. Both paths are heroic. Her role also expands the epic's moral scope. Where many epics glorify male action and conquest, the Odyssey elevates a woman's endurance as a parallel kind of heroism. Penelope's resistance to the suitors is not less dramatic than Odysseus's escape from Scylla. Her refusal to surrender, her will, is not less brave than his descent into Hades. The heroism of the home is made equal to the heroism of the journey. Moreover, Penelope is central to the poem's exploration of recognition. The theme of anagnorisis, the moment of knowing, runs throughout the Odyssey. Telemachus recognizes his father. The dog Argos dies after recognizing Odysseus. Euryclea knows him by his scar. But it is Penelope's recognition that matters most. It is she who sees not only the man, but the meaning. Her recognition is not based on physical features, but on truth, on intimacy, on history. In a final poetic inversion, it is Penelope who delays the reunion. Odysseus has slaughtered the suitors, reclaimed his home, revealed himself to his son. But the ultimate moment of return, of belonging, rests in Penelope's hands. She controls the narrative now. She decides when the story ends, and she does so not with surrender but with one final test. This test, and the manner in which it unfolds, elevates Penelope from queen to hero. She is not merely the goal of Odysseus's journey, she is its culmination. The journey is not complete until the relationship that was broken by war and time is reforged in truth. Until both hero and heroine have endured and emerged, not unchanged, but real, weathered, and whole. Penelope's presence also reshapes the poem's view of power. She does not rule with armies or decrees. Her power is relational, narrative, psychological. She commands loyalty not through fear, but through respect. Her control of information, of what is said, withheld, or revealed, makes her the epic's most consistent wielder of narrative tension. Even in silence, she acts. Even in waiting, she chooses. In modern terms, Penelope offers a model of strength that transcends gender. Her courage is emotional. Her weapon is memory. Her victory is the endurance of love, not as fantasy, but as practice. She does not demand perfection of Odysseus. She demands truth, and when he gives it, she welcomes him, not as a hero, but as a man. Through Penelope, the Odyssey becomes more than an adventure. It becomes a meditation on partnership, on the twin heroism of departure and return, of action and stillness, of seeking and waiting. Hers is the heroism of those who endure without glory, who hold the center while the world spins outward, who remember what must not be forgotten. In the long shadow of Troy, among all the clever men and wrathful gods, it is Penelope who shines as a quiet force of order, of intellect, of fidelity, not as a footnote to Odysseus's journey, but as its equal and necessary counterpoint. She is not just the woman he returns to, she is the reason he returns at all. In the vast shadow of Odysseus stands another figure, less famed, less storied, but equally essential to the Odyssey's vision of heroism, identity, and legacy. Telemachus, the son of Odysseus and Penelope, is not a warrior or a trickster. He does not battle monsters or defy the gods, but his journey, though quieter and more internal, is just as vital. It is the journey of becoming, a coming-of-age narrative that intersects with themes of fatherhood, inheritance, and the birth of moral agency. In Telemachus, we witness not the culmination of epic, but the continuation of life itself. When the Odyssey begins, Odysseus is absent, and Telemachus is unformed. He is a young man growing up in a house dominated by hostile guests and paralyzed by uncertainty. His father has been gone for nearly 20 years, 10 at Troy, 10 more lost at sea. The kingdom is still his in name, but his authority is negligible. The suitors eat his food, mock his voice, dismiss his lineage. He is a prince in theory, but a boy in practice. It is Athena, in disguise, who first calls him to act. Visiting Ithaca in the form of Mentis, she challenges Telemachus to stop wallowing in passivity. She urges him to gather the elders, to speak up, to take control. She plants the seed of agency and the hope that his father may still live. This divine push is crucial. In a world shaped by prophecy and divine will, Telemachus's transformation requires divine ignition, but from that point on, his growth becomes his own. Telemachus's early attempts at leadership are uncertain. He calls an assembly, his first public speech, but is quickly dismissed by the older men. The suitors jeer, his voice trembles, his identity is not yet crystallized, but even in failure, he has begun. He steps into the public realm, makes his claim, and takes the first symbolic step away from childhood. The real shift comes with his journey. At Athena's urging, he leaves Ithaca to seek news of his father. He travels first to Pylos, home of Nestor, and then to Sparta, to the court of Menelaus and Helen. These encounters are rich with symbolic weight. Telemachus is not simply seeking facts. He is immersing himself in the world of his father's peers, absorbing their stories, witnessing their virtues and flaws. He hears of the Trojan War, of Odysseus's cleverness, of others who returned home in triumph, or who fell to betrayal and tragedy. What he finds is not certainty, but complexity. Nestor represents tradition, the wisdom of old age. He speaks in long, formal narratives, rich in memory, but short on direct answers. Menelaus offers luxury, wealth, nostalgia, and grief. He tells of Helen's role in the war, of deception and regret. Helen herself adds another layer. A woman, of myth, who challenges the black and white morality of epic. Through them, Telemachus learns that heroism is never pure, and that memory is always contested. These lessons matter. Telemachus does not return to Ithaca with an army or a prophecy. He returns with knowledge of the world, of his father, of himself. He has seen what adulthood entails: pain, ambiguity, history. He no longer acts like a boy. He listens, plans, and dares to hope. When he arrives home, he does not yet know his father is there, disguised as a beggar, but his actions show his growth. He speaks to Penelope with newfound authority. He tries to protect her. He tries to shield the beggar. He becomes a quiet force of stability in the household. And when Odysseus reveals himself, their reunion is among the most moving in the epic, not because of drama, but because of restraint. Odysseus tests his son. He wants to know, is this young man ready? Telemachus responds not with tears, but with loyalty, readiness, and a willingness to take up arms. Their embrace is brief but transformative. From that point forward, father and son act in concert. They are not simply related, they are aligned. In the slaughter of the suitors, Telemachus plays a crucial role. He arms his father, locks the doors, defends his home. He kills. He becomes in action the heir not just to a throne, but to a legacy. Yet his heroism is different from Odysseus. He is less cunning, more open. He does not hide. He does not deceive. He stands. This difference is important. The Odyssey is not about replication, but evolution. Telemachus is not a mirror of Odysseus. He is his next iteration. Where Odysseus relies on disguise, Telemachus relies on declaration. Where Odysseus maneuvers, Telemachus confronts. Their strengths are complementary. The poem suggests that the future will be different, but still strong. Telemachus's presence also reframes the epic's central theme of return. Odysseus's homecoming is not just to a wife and a bed, it is to a role as father. He must now teach, model, pass on. His trials end not with vengeance, but with succession. The restoration of Ithaca is not complete until the next generation is ready. Throughout the epic, the father-son dynamic is echoed in many forms. Odysseus misses the childhood of his son. Telemachus longs for the approval of a father he never knew. Their reunion is both literal and symbolic. It reestablishes continuity in a world broken by war. It also invites the audience to reflect on inheritance, not only of power, but of values. Telemachus inherits more than a throne. He inherits a story, and that story, of identity shaped by absence, tested by experience, and confirmed by loyalty, becomes his own. In the closing books, he stands beside Odysseus, not as an apprentice, but as a peer. He is part of the final confrontation. He is part of the reconciliation. He will not need to wander. His journey was within. Homer does not tell us what becomes of Telemachus after the end. Later myths and epics offer divergent paths, but in the Odyssey, his arc is complete. He is moved from silence to speech, from uncertainty to action. He is no longer the child of a legend. He is a man who knows who he is. In literary terms, Telemachus gives the epic its generational depth. He allows us to see the cost of absence, the endurance of memory, and the possibility of renewal. Through him, the story becomes more than a tale of homecoming. It becomes a meditation on legacy. In modern readings, Telemachus often symbolizes the quiet strength of those shaped by others' journeys. He reminds us that growth can happen without War, that courage can be quiet, and that becoming oneself is a journey as long and arduous as any voyage across stormy seas. He is not the hero who left. He is the reason the hero returns. In the Odyssey, the gods are ever present, guiding, punishing, rewarding, and testing. Their role is integral to the unfolding of Odysseus's journey, shaping not only the course of events, but also the moral and philosophical framework of the epic. The gods are not mere backdrops to human action. They are active participants, embodying the complexities of fate, free will, and divine justice. Yet, as much as they intervene, the Odyssey repeatedly explores the tension between divine will and human agency, between the power of the gods and the resilience of human determination. At the heart of the epic is Odysseus's struggle to return home. The gods are key to this struggle. Poseidon, the god of the sea, embodies the forces of obstruction and chaos. It is Poseidon's wrath that delays Odysseus's return time and again, whether through shipwrecks, storms, or monstrous encounters. Poseidon is relentless, and his anger is personal. Odysseus blinded his son, Polyphemus, and for this crime Poseidon exacts punishment. In this sense, Poseidon's role represents the unyielding, often vindictive nature of fate, the cosmic forces that do not always align with human desires or actions. Poseidon's actions raise an essential question. Can Odysseus, or any mortal, truly escape the whims of the gods? How much control does he have over his own destiny? It is tempting to see Poseidon as a purely antagonistic force, but his role is more nuanced. His anger, though personal, is also a reminder of the gods' dominance in the mortal realm. It is a reminder that, while humans may try to control their own fate, the gods ultimately shape the course of events. Yet, despite Poseidon's relentless opposition, Odysseus is not without allies. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, is Odysseus's divine protector. She intervenes on his behalf at key moments, aiding him with wisdom, courage, and sometimes direct intervention. Athena's guidance is not the same as Poseidon's punishment. Hers is a more benevolent, supportive presence, steering Odysseus toward his goals rather than obstructing him. One of Athena's key roles in the Odyssey is to help Odysseus navigate the complex relationship between fate and free will. While the gods control many aspects of his journey, Athena allows Odysseus to exercise his own judgment and make his own decisions. She does not shield him from all danger. Rather, she provides him with the tools to face it. Athena's role then is not to alter the course of fate, but to empower Odysseus to meet the challenges that fate presents. She is the divine embodiment of wisdom, a force that allows Odysseus to turn even adversity to his advantage. This tension between fate and free will is at the core of Odysseus's journey. While he may be at the mercy of the gods in many respects, his success lies not in avoiding divine intervention, but in using his own wit and determination to navigate it. The gods may control the storm, but Odysseus must steer the ship. The gods may send monsters, but Odysseus must outsmart them. The gods may test him with temptations, but Odysseus must choose whether to give in. In each instance, the gods serve not as absolutes, but as catalysts, forces that shape Odysseus's choices rather than making them for him. For example, when Odysseus faces the temptation of the sirens, it is not Athena or Poseidon who dictates his response, but his own wisdom and self-discipline. Athena helps by giving him the means to resist, but Odysseus chooses to tie himself to the mast. This moment is a pivotal one in the epic, because it highlights the interplay between divine guidance and human agency. The gods may offer support, but the final decision rests with Odysseus. This theme runs throughout the poem. Odysseus' greatest strength is not his physical prowess, but his ability to think, adapt, and choose in the face of adversity. Another key example of the gods' influence comes during Odysseus's encounter with Circe. While Circe is a powerful figure, able to transform Odysseus's men into animals, it is Athena who gives him the magical herb, moly, to resist her spell. Yet, even with the herb's protection, Odysseus must still confront Circe. He must negotiate with her, use his wit to turn the situation to his advantage. In this way, Athena's gift is a tool, but Odysseus's success depends on his ability to use it wisely. Once again, the gods provide assistance, but Odysseus's own decisions determine the outcome. The gods also play a significant role in the moral and philosophical themes of the epic. While the gods intervene in Odysseus' journey, they also reflect the complex nature of divine justice. In many ways, the gods mirror the complexities of human behavior. Poseidon's anger at Odysseus is not unreasonable. Odysseus blinded his son, and in the world of the gods, vengeance is often seen as justified. Athena's protection of Odysseus, on the other hand, reflects a different aspect of divine justice, one rooted in wisdom, honor, and respect for intelligence. The gods do not represent a singular moral system. Rather, they embody the different forces at play in the world. Zeus, as the king of the gods, is the ultimate authority in the Odyssey. He represents the force of fate and order. In the poem's final stages, it is Zeus who decrees the end of the conflict between Odysseus and the suitors. He sends a thunderbolt to seal the peace, showing that while Odysseus' actions are important, they are ultimately part of a larger divine plan. This suggests that while human agency is vital, the gods' overarching influence remains a constant. Zeus' role also highlights the theme of reconciliation. At the end of the poem, when the suitors' families seek vengeance, Zeus intervenes to stop the cycle of violence. The gods do not allow the story to end in endless bloodshed. They step in to restore balance, offering a resolution that allows Odysseus to finally return to a peaceful life. This divine act of intervention suggests that while the gods may be unpredictable and often harsh, there is also a higher justice that seeks to restore order and peace. Ultimately, the Odyssey is not a story of divine dominance, but of human struggle within a divine framework. The gods are not the only actors in the story. They are at times agents of fate, but they also respect Odysseus's choices. The poem's resolution, with its return to order, does not imply that the gods simply hand Odysseus's victory. It suggests that Odysseus's success is a result of both his own efforts and the gods' interventions. His victory, then, is not absolute. It is a negotiation between divine will and human agency, a reminder that while we may not control the forces of fate, we can still navigate them with wisdom and courage. In the end, the Odyssey is a poem about balance. It is about the interplay between the will of the gods and the will of men. The gods shape Odysseus's journey, but it is his decisions that define it. The gods may grant him wisdom or punish him with storms, but it is his choices that allow him to survive. This tension between divine will and human agency gives the poem its depth. It is not a simple story of a hero who triumphs over the gods, but of a man who learns to live within a world governed by forces both seen and unseen. The gods, then, are not simply characters in the story. They are reflections of the larger cosmic forces at play: justice, fate, wisdom, and vengeance. They are not all-powerful. They are not all-knowing. They are in many ways as complex as the human beings they govern. In the Odyssey, the gods are not just symbols of divine might. They are figures of moral complexity, forces that shape the world, but do not fully control it. At its heart, the Odyssey is a profound exploration of human experience, not just through its events, but through its themes, which resonate deeply across time. The poem's thematic structures, hospitality, identity, and memory, are not mere background elements but foundational forces that drive both the plot and the characters. These themes intertwine, creating a rich narrative that reflects the values of ancient Greek society while speaking to the universal human condition. One of the most central themes of the Odyssey is hospitality, or xenia, which is a sacred practice in the ancient Greek world. This theme is not only essential for the social fabric of Homer's Ithaca, but also acts as a moral compass for the poem. Xenia is not simply about offering food and shelter to strangers. It is about respect, trust, and the acknowledgement of the divine within the stranger. A violation of this custom as we see through the suitors, is a violation of the social order itself. In fact, it is a central part of Odysseus's return to Ithaca that he must first restore the principle of xenia, expelling those who have trampled on it. From the very beginning, the Odyssey presents us with examples of hospitality that are starkly contrasting. When Odysseus is first shipwrecked on the shores of Scheria, the island of the Phaeacians, he encounters Nausicaa, who shows him the first example of perfect hospitality. She offers him clothes, food, and guidance, asking only that he not cause her any trouble. This act of kindness sets the tone for Odysseus's treatment by the Phaeacians. They welcome him with open arms, ensuring that he is cared for before they ask questions. This hospitality is divine in its purity, demonstrating an ideal practice of xenia. In contrast, the suitors of Ithaca abuse the very concept of hospitality. They invade Odysseus' home, eat his food, drink his wine, and mock his wife. They demand the hand of Penelope without offering anything in return, violating the sacred codes of hospitality. The suitors' actions not only reflect their moral degradation, but also set the stage for their ultimate punishment. When Odysseus returns, he restores justice to his household by exacting vengeance upon those who dishonored Xenia. The thematic structure of hospitality is thus not just a social obligation, but a divine moral law that guides the story's resolution. Another critical theme explored in the epic is identity. For Odysseus, identity is fluid, shaped by both the divine and the human world. His ability to change his identity is one of his defining characteristics. Throughout the epic, Odysseus is a master of disguise, using his wits to outmaneuver both gods and mortals. From his clever escape from the Cyclops to his beggar disguise upon returning to Ithaca, Odysseus constantly shifts and hides his true nature to serve his larger goals. This fluidity of identity is most notably seen in his interaction with his wife, Penelope. When Odysseus returns, he is disguised as a beggar, and Penelope does not recognize him. She tests him, not only to confirm his identity, but also to ensure that his return is genuine and not some divine trick. She is a guardian of his identity, preserving not just his name but his essence, his place in the family, and his legacy. This final moment of recognition, when Odysseus reveals himself through his knowledge of their immovable bed, emphasizes that identity is not fixed. It is something that must be continuously proven and re-established, especially after long absence and hardship. The theme of identity is also explored through Telemachus. He begins the epic as a boy with little authority, overshadowed by the memory of his great father. But throughout the poem, Telemachus embarks on a journey of self-discovery. As he learns more about his father through his travels to Pylos and Sparta, he begins to grow into his own identity, ultimately taking on his role as Odysseus's heir. Telemachus's evolution is one of the key arcs of the poem, as he steps out of his father's shadow and comes into his own. The journey is not just physical but psychological. Telemachus must find his own place in the world before he can understand and accept the identity he inherits. The theme of memory is inextricably linked to identity in the Odyssey. Memory shapes Odysseus's journey and is central to his character. From the very beginning, when Homer asks the muse to sing of the man who had wandered far, memory is presented as a guiding force. For Odysseus, the journey home is as much about remembering as it is about returning. His thoughts, his longings, and his memories of Ithaca, of Penelope, and of the life he left behind fuel his resilience. He cannot return until he has reconciled with the past, until the memory of his homeland, family, and kingdom is restored in his heart. Memory, however, is not always reliable or straightforward. In his encounter with the Lotus Eaters, Odysseus's men lose their memory of home, falling into a blissful stupor. The danger of forgetting is presented starkly here. The loss of memory is the loss of purpose, of identity, and of the will to act. Similarly, when Odysseus reaches the underworld, he seeks the guidance of Tiresias, the blind prophet, not only to understand his fate, but to reconnect with the memories of those who have died. The journey to the underworld is both a literal and figurative descent into the past, where Odysseus confronts the faces and voices of those who are lost to him. In these encounters, memory takes on a dual role. It is both a source of strength and a source of sorrow. It drives Odysseus forward, but it also burdens him with regret and loss. In contrast to the transient nature of human memory, the gods are immortal, and their memories are fixed and unchanging. They see the past clearly, but they also have the power to manipulate it, to create or erase memories as they see fit. This tension between human memory and divine manipulation is at the core of Odysseus's struggle. He cannot escape the past, but he must find a way to reconcile it with his present. The interplay between hospitality, identity, and memory creates a moral and philosophical framework that shapes the entire narrative. These themes are not merely abstract ideas but are woven into the fabric of the epic, guiding Odysseus on his journey and shaping the actions of the characters around him. The gods, the suitors, Penelope, and Telemachus all engage with these themes in different ways, illustrating the complexities of Greek values and the human experience. For example, Penelope's role in preserving memory is crucial. She does not simply wait for Odysseus to return. She actively maintains the memory of him, keeping him alive through her actions and through the stories she tells. She is the keeper of their shared identity, and when Odysseus returns, it is her knowledge of him, his true identity, that ensures their reunion. Similarly, Telemachus's journey is one of both physical exploration and self-discovery. As he learns about his father's legacy, he also learns about his own identity and place in the world. His journey parallels Odysseus, but while Odysseus' journey is outward, Telemachus is inward. He must confront the loss of his father and step into his role as heir, a process that requires not just learning about Odysseus, but also understanding his own potential. The suitors, by contrast, embody the abuse of hospitality and the degradation of identity. They have no respect for the sacred rules of Xenia. They do not honor the home they occupy. They only consume, exploit, and tarnish it. Their disregard for Odysseus, Penelope, and the gods reveals the consequences of forgetting the past and acting without moral compass. Their deaths at the hands of Odysseus are not only a personal revenge, but a restoration of cosmic justice, a return to the moral order that the suitors have violated. In the Odyssey, hospitality, identity, and memory are not just thematic elements. They are the driving forces of the story. Odysseus's journey home is not simply about returning to a place. It is about reconciling with the people he loves, recovering his identity, and confronting the memories that have shaped his destiny. The gods may shape his fate, but it is his own actions, informed by these themes, that allow him to reclaim his kingdom, his family, and himself. The moral of the Odyssey is clear. While the gods may influence our fates, it is our choices, our actions toward others, our respect for memory, and our understanding of who we are that ultimately shape the lives we lead. The gods may test us, but it is our humanity that defines us. The final chapters of the Odyssey are both the culmination and the resolution of Odysseus's long and arduous journey. Yet, even as the epic draws to its conclusion, the themes of homecoming, restoration, and the process of reclaiming what was lost resonate with both personal and universal significance. The Odyssey is not merely about the return of a king to his throne, but about the restoration of order in a world marred by violence, chaos, and abandonment. Ithaca, once a symbol of Odysseus's longing, becomes the stage for his return, not just as a physical home, but as a place where identity, justice, and peace must be restored. The journey home is the focus of Odysseus's final trials. After the bloodshed of the suitors, the palace in Ithaca is a place of destruction and disorder. The suitors, who had violated the sacred laws of hospitality, have been killed, and the violence that has marked Odysseus's return stands in stark contrast to the serenity of his homecoming. This return, while satisfying in terms of justice, is not peaceful. It requires further action to restore the kingdom that was once the heart of Odysseus's world. The restoration of Ithaca is not a simple task of defeating enemies. In the Odyssey, it is deeply tied to the idea of order, both familial and social. Odysseus must rebuild his relationships, his kingdom, and the moral fabric of his society. He must face not only the external forces of the suitors' families, but also the internal forces of identity and authority that were disrupted by his absence. His return is not only a physical journey but a psychological and emotional one, as he reconciles with his family, his people, and himself. As the epic moves toward its climax, the tension between vengeance and reconciliation becomes palpable. After the slaughter of the suitors, the surviving members of their families seek retribution. They gather together, led by Eupeithes, the father of Antinous, one of the suitors killed by Odysseus. They march toward the palace, seeking justice for the deaths of their sons. In this moment, Odysseus's control over his fate is challenged once again. His victory, hard-earned and long-suffered, is now at risk of unraveling, as the suitors' families threaten to undo the peace he has restored. However, the resolution comes not through further bloodshed, but through divine intervention. Athena, who has guided Odysseus throughout his journey, steps in one last time to bring peace to the conflict. In her intervention, she encourages both sides to accept the divine will and cease hostilities. Zeus, the king of the gods, also delivers his judgment, reinforcing the importance of peace and reconciliation. The conflict between Odysseus and the suitors' families ends with a decree from the gods, and the cycle of violence is finally brought to a close. This divine intervention is crucial for the restoration of Ithaca. It shows that, while Odysseus has the strength and cunning to reclaim his kingdom, the final peace can only be secured with divine approval. The gods, who have shaped the events of the Odyssey from the very beginning, are not merely passive observers. Their influence in the resolution of the conflict highlights the role of divine will in human affairs and underscores the importance of cosmic justice. With the threat from the suitors' families extinguished, Ithaca can begin to heal. Odysseus' return is complete, not because he has conquered or defeated, but because he has reconciled. He must rebuild his relationship with his people, reassert his authority, and restore the harmony that once defined his home. His final acts of restoration are not about vengeance, but about reestablishing peace and order. It is a reminder that the journey home is not just about reclaiming land or wealth, but about reclaiming relationships, trust, and the moral foundation of one's community. The restoration of Odysseus' kingdom is also mirrored in his restoration as a father and husband. The reunion with Penelope is a quiet yet profound moment. After all the years of separation, after all the trials he has faced, Odysseus returns not as a king, but as a man who must be recognized, not only by Penelope, but by himself. The recognition scene, where Odysseus reveals his identity through the knowledge of their bed, is not simply a moment of personal reunion, but also a symbolic act of reclaiming the core of his life. Their bed, made from a living olive tree, represents the enduring nature of their relationship, and its immovability is a testament to the stability of their bond. Similarly, his relationship with Telemachus, his son, is restored as well. When Telemachus first sees Odysseus, he is overwhelmed with disbelief and awe. But as father and son work together to defeat the suitors, they reaffirm their bond. Telemachus, who had once been a child overshadowed by the memory of his father, now stands beside Odysseus as an equal. This joint action, this shared victory, marks the culmination of Telemachus's coming of age. His growth is not just about learning to be a man, but about learning to be a leader, one who can take his place beside his father, not behind him. In many ways, the theme of homecoming in the Odyssey is less about the destination and more about the journey of reconciliation. Odysseus's homecoming is not a straightforward return to comfort or triumph. It is a difficult process of rebuilding what was lost, restoring what was broken, and reconciling with the past. It is only when Odysseus has dealt with the consequences of his absence, faced the challenges of restoring his kingdom, and reconciled with those he loves, that his journey can be said to be complete. The motif of homecoming is also deeply tied to restoration. The idea of bringing back order, harmony, and justice is a key element of the epic. Odysseus does not simply reclaim his throne, he reasserts the values that govern Ithaca, values of hospitality, loyalty, and justice. The suitors who have violated these values are punished. But it is not only through violence that Odysseus restores order. It is also through his actions as a father, a husband, and a king. His return is a return to these values, a restoration of the moral fabric of his society. This restoration is also mirrored in the reclamation of Ithaca itself. The island, which has been marked by lawlessness and disorder during Odysseus' absence, is now restored to its rightful ruler. But Ithaca is more than just a physical place. It is the embodiment of Odysseus's life, his family, and his identity. To reclaim Ithaca is to reclaim himself. It is not just a political victory, but a personal one. In the end, the journey home in the Odyssey is not simply a return to a physical location. It is a journey of moral and psychological restoration. Odysseus must confront the consequences of his actions, rebuild his relationships, and reassert his values. His homecoming is not complete until these tasks are fulfilled. The final piece, sealed by the gods, is not just a return to power, but a restoration of the balance and harmony that once defined his life. The lasting impact of the Odyssey is felt not only in the literature of the ancient world, but also in the cultural and intellectual fabric of Western civilization. Written in the 8th century BCE, Homer's epic poem has shaped narrative structures, themes, and character development for millennia. Its influence extends beyond the realm of literature, resonating in philosophy, art, politics, and even modern entertainment. The tale of Odysseus, his long journey home, and his struggle to restore order to his life and kingdom has proved a timeless reflection of the human condition, one that continues to echo through the ages. One of the most profound aspects of the Odyssey's legacy is its impact on the narrative form. The structure of the poem, woven from multiple interlocking episodes, is one of its most distinctive features. The epic's combination of adventure, character exploration, divine intervention, and moral reflection set the stage for countless works of fiction that followed. In many ways, the Odyssey can be considered the archetype for the hero's journey, a narrative pattern that has been adapted, transformed, and repeated across genres for centuries. The motif of the wandering hero, in particular, is central to both the Iliad and the Odyssey. However, it is in the Odyssey that this theme comes to full fruition. The idea of a journey that takes a person out of the known world, through trials and tribulations, and back again, changed, tested, and wiser, has become one of the most enduring narrative structures in Western storytelling. From medieval tales of knights and chivalry to modern works like J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings and George Lucas's Star Wars, the Odyssey has served as a foundational model for the conception of the adventure narrative. The themes of homecoming and identity, central to Odysseus's journey, have also left an indelible mark on literature and philosophy. Odysseus's struggle to reconcile his experiences abroad with his homecoming in Ithaca speaks to the human need for self-discovery and the difficulty of returning to the self after transformative experiences. This theme of the journey's psychological toll on the hero resonates in works across centuries. From the existential struggles of characters in modern novels to the archetypal heroes of fantasy literature, the quest for identity, home, and a sense of belonging remains one of the most universal human experiences. Similarly, the role of the gods in the Odyssey and the tension between divine will and human agency has influenced literary and philosophical thought for centuries. In the Odyssey, the gods are not simply beings that manipulate the fate of humans. They also represent the complexities of justice, mercy, and vengeance. The interaction between the divine and human in the epic raises fundamental questions about the nature of fate, free will, and divine intervention, issues that would become central to later philosophical discourse, particularly in the works of thinkers like Plato, Aristotle, and later in the Christian theological tradition. In modern interpretations of the Odyssey, this divine-human relationship often takes on new meanings. Some contemporary readers view the gods as symbolic representations of forces beyond the control of humans, such as nature, chance, or even psychological states. Others see them as embodying the archetypes of the unconscious mind, with Odysseus' interactions with the gods reflecting internal struggles for self-knowledge, wisdom, and self-mastery. The way the Odyssey grapples with the tension between fate and free will continues to inspire philosophical inquiry and literary exploration in the present day. Beyond literature, the Odyssey has influenced art, culture, and politics, leaving its mark on Western history in ways both obvious and subtle. From the Renaissance to the present day, artists have been captivated by the story of Odysseus. The great visual artists, like Raphael, Rembrandt, and others, have used the rich imagery of the Odyssey to inspire paintings, sculptures, and frescoes, often focusing on the themes of divine intervention, perilous voyages, and heroic return. Stories of Odysseus's encounters with monsters such as the Cyclops, the Sirens, and Scylla and Charybdis have been immortalized in countless works of art. These representations are not just depictions of mythological creatures, they are reflections of the fears, desires, and moral lessons inherent in the epic. The battle between human ingenuity and divine caprice is expressed visually in these artworks, just as it is in the poem itself. Odysseus's confrontations with forces beyond his control are not just literal. They are symbolic representations of the human struggle with the unknown and the uncontrollable. In the realm of philosophy, the Odyssey has been a touchstone for discussions about morality, ethics, and the nature of the good life. The complex portrayal of Odysseus as both hero and trickster, as both a model of cunning and a man driven by hubris, has made him an interesting subject for philosophers. Some see Odysseus as an example of virtue, the clever, resourceful hero who uses intelligence and strategy to overcome the odds. Others see him as a figure who must confront the consequences of his actions, including his deceptions and his pride. The ethical dilemmas presented in the Odyssey, such as the use of deceit, the treatment of enemies, and the question of vengeance versus justice, have continued to be discussed in modern ethical philosophy. The question of whether the ends justify the means, the ethics of hospitality, and the morality of revenge are just a few of the issues raised by the epic. These questions are not simply relevant to the ancient world, they remain central to our moral and philosophical inquiries today. Politically, the Odyssey has been interpreted as a metaphor for the struggle between order and chaos, power and responsibility. Odysseus's journey can be seen as a political allegory of the leader's responsibility to restore order to a fragmented and decaying state. His homecoming represents not just a return to power, but the reassertion of his moral authority as a ruler. In this sense, the Odyssey has had a profound influence on the development of political thought, particularly in relation to the responsibilities of rulers and the relationship between leaders and their subjects. In the modern world, the Odyssey has found a place in popular culture, inspiring films, novels, plays, and other media. Its themes of travel, homecoming, and the search for meaning continue to resonate with contemporary audiences. The figure of the wandering hero, searching for self-knowledge, seeking reconciliation, confronting obstacles and overcoming trials, remains one of the most powerful motifs in modern storytelling. Movies like O Brother, Where Art Thou?, which directly adapts the structure and themes of the Odyssey, and the popular television series Lost, which echoes Odysseus's journey with its stranded survivors, demonstrate the continued relevance of Homer's epic. In literature, the influence of the Odyssey can be traced through numerous works. James Joyce's Ulysses, perhaps the most famous modern reimagining of Homer's epic, draws direct parallels between Odysseus's return to Ithaca and Leopold Bloom's journey through Dublin. Joyce's novel is a profound meditation on the nature of home, identity, and the passage of time, echoing many of the concerns found in the Odyssey. In addition, the archetype of the epic journey, introduced in the Odyssey, has been embraced by countless storytellers across genres and cultures. Whether in fantasy literature, detective stories, or even superhero comics, the idea of a protagonist who embarks on a journey, overcomes obstacles, and returns home transformed is a central element of modern storytelling. The influence of Odysseus as a character and the structure of his journey remain foundational to the concept of the hero's arc in contemporary fiction. The Odyssey's themes of identity, morality, loyalty, and homecoming continue to resonate because they speak to universal aspects of human experience. The journey from confusion to clarity, from exile to reconciliation, is one that continues to define the human experience. Through its complex characters, its divine and mortal conflicts, and its meditations on fate and free will, the Odyssey remains one of the most influential and enduring works of literature in Western culture. The structure of the Odyssey is one of the most distinctive and innovative aspects of the epic. Homer's use of narrative techniques and stylistic devices to weave together multiple storylines, time frames, and character perspectives has influenced the way storytelling is approached in literature to this day. The poem's narrative complexity reflects not only Homer's mastery of form, but also the thematic richness that underscores the entire work. The journey of Odysseus is not told in a straightforward linear fashion. Instead, Homer uses a series of nested stories, flashbacks, and narrative interruptions to build suspense, deepen character development, and enhance the moral and philosophical reflections at the core of the epic. Perhaps the most striking feature of the narrative structure in the Odyssey is its non-linear progression. The epic opens not with Odysseus's return to Ithaca, but with a description of the suitor's occupation of his palace and the challenges faced by his wife, Penelope. It then shifts to Telemachus's journey, as he begins to search for his father, before returning to the ongoing adventures of Odysseus in flashback. This non-linear storytelling is not just a narrative device, it is integral to the thematic exploration of memory, identity, and time. By opening with Telemachus and Penelope's struggles and then revealing Odysseus's tale through flashbacks, Homer creates an initial sense of dramatic irony. The audience knows Odysseus is still alive, but Telemachus and the suitors do not. This layering of perspectives allows the audience to experience the journey from multiple vantage points, while also mirroring the fragmented way in which Odysseus's journey has unfolded in time. It is a story of long delays, lost years, and memories that cannot be neatly categorized. The use of flashbacks in the Odyssey is one of the key ways Homer controls the pacing and flow of the narrative. The epic begins in medias res, starting in the midst of Odysseus's absence, and gradually unspools his adventures through storytelling. Odysseus narrates his own journey to the Phaeacians in one of the most famous speeches in the epic. This structure mirrors the process of remembering and recounting. Odysseus is not just telling his tale to the Phaeacians, he is reflecting on the series of events that have shaped him, the choices he made, and the time that has passed. These interruptions in the narrative also allow for moments of reflection and analysis, giving both the audience and Odysseus himself time to pause and consider the deeper implications of his experiences. The gods, particularly Athena and Poseidon, play a crucial role not only in Odysseus's journey, but in the structure of the narrative itself. Divine intervention is woven throughout the poem, and it is the gods who determine much of the framework in which Odysseus operates. Yet the gods also act as devices that shape the story's movement from one event to the next. The interventions of the gods are often depicted as sudden and unexpected, creating shifts in the narrative flow. For instance, Athena's intervention helps Odysseus escape from Calypso's island, yet it is Poseidon's wrath that delays his arrival back in Ithaca. These divine disruptions create the episodic structure of the epic, as Odysseus's journey is continually redirected and delayed, each time pushing him further into unknown or dangerous realms. This shifting influence reflects the unpredictable nature of life itself, as well as the ancient Greek view that human beings are subject to both divine will and their own choices. The gods' interventions also add layers of irony to the story. For instance, Athena's repeated support of Odysseus is often undermined by Poseidon's anger. The divine characters are not static or predictable. They are complex, with motivations and actions that sometimes align with, and other times run counter to, the goals of the hero. These contrasting forces create tension within the narrative and force Odysseus to rely on more than just his own wits. He must also navigate the whims of the gods. Another stylistic device that Homer employs throughout the Odyssey is repetition. This technique is used in a variety of ways, from the repeated recounting of certain events to the recurrent imagery that punctuates the text. The repetition serves multiple functions. It helps to reinforce the poem's major themes, deepens the characterization, and provides a rhythmic structure to the storytelling. One of the most prominent uses of repetition is in the recurring motifs of hospitality, homecoming, and recognition. The concept of Xenia, hospitality, appears throughout the epic as a moral touchstone, constantly reiterated through Odysseus' interactions with hosts and strangers. Similarly, the theme of Odysseus's homecoming is reflected in repeated references to his journey, his longing for Ithaca, and the long delays he suffers. The repetition of these motifs creates a sense of continuity and inevitability, reinforcing the centrality of these themes in the epic. Equally important is the repetition of heroic qualities, such as wit, intelligence, and endurance, which Odysseus must repeatedly display throughout his journey. His ability to think quickly and his resourcefulness are traits that are emphasized in various episodes, from his escape from Polyphemus to his interaction with Circe. These moments of repetition help to underscore the core of his character. His identity as a hero is built upon his ability to face adversity not just through strength, but through intellect and adaptability. Homer also uses direct speech to create drama, deepen characterization, and push the plot forward. Speech in the Odyssey is a crucial tool for revealing a character's personality, motivations, and worldview. Odysseus himself is a master of rhetoric and persuasion, using speech to manipulate, deceive, and convince both mortals and gods. His interactions with the Cyclops, for instance, showcase his cleverness and mastery of language as he tricks Polyphemus into giving him his name as Nobody, which later enables his escape. Penelope, too, uses speech as a tool to assert her power and wisdom. Her conversation with the beggar, Odysseus, in the final books is a key moment of the poem, as she tests his identity through subtle yet powerful dialogue. The way she questions and probes the beggar's knowledge of their shared history reflects her intelligence and strategic mind. Her use of speech to maintain control over the suitors, even when she appears to be passively waiting, also highlights her pivotal role in the epic. The art of storytelling is another important narrative technique in the Odyssey. The poem contains numerous stories within stories, with characters recounting their own adventures or experiences. Odysseus himself is the most prominent storyteller, recounting his encounters with the gods, monsters, and various cultures. His stories are not just factual accounts. They are shaped by his own perspective, revealing his character and his evolving understanding of his journey. Storytelling in the Odyssey serves not only as a means of communication, but also as a way of shaping reality. The way stories are told, their structure, emphasis, and omissions directly affects the listener's perception of the events. This use of storytelling also ties back to the theme of memory. Many of Odysseus's stories are about remembering, whether it is recalling his time at Troy, his adventures with Circe, or the loss of his companions. The stories he tells are a means of reconstituting his identity and understanding the trajectory of his journey. As the poem progresses, Odysseus' recounting of these stories becomes a form of catharsis, a way of processing the trials he has endured and reconciling the man he is now with the man he was before the journey began. Homer's use of similes and vivid imagery also enhances the narrative style and structure of the Odyssey. The epic is filled with extended similes that draw parallels between human actions and natural phenomena, often emphasizing the heroic nature of the characters or the chaos of the events they face. For example, when Odysseus fights the suitors or contemplates his next move, Homer compares his actions to those of animals or natural forces, adding layers of meaning to the story. The imagery in the Odyssey often connects Odysseus's physical journey to a deeper, more spiritual or emotional quest. Descriptions of the sea, the sky, the forests, and the monsters he faces not only serve to create a rich visual experience for the reader, but also symbolize the inner struggles that Odysseus faces. The contrast between the warm hearth of Ithaca and the dangers of the open sea mirrors his internal battle between the comfort of home and the uncertainty of the world. These stylistic devices, the similes, imagery, repetition, and storytelling, are not just embellishments but integral components of the poem's meaning. They work together to reinforce the themes of journey, struggle, and identity, creating a narrative that is as layered and complex as the journey it describes. The Odyssey remains a timeless work, not only as a cornerstone of classical literature, but as a living text that continues to resonate with modern audiences. Its themes of homecoming, identity, memory, and the interplay between fate and free will are as relevant today as they were in ancient Greece. The ways in which the Odyssey has been interpreted, adapted, and reimagined over centuries highlight its enduring appeal, as well as its ability to speak to the universal human experience, from the existential struggles of individuals to the political and social issues of the modern world. In the centuries following its composition, the Odyssey has been read through a wide variety of lenses, each reflecting the values and concerns of the time. In classical antiquity, the epic was viewed as a central text that defined Greek heroism and the virtues of wisdom, endurance, and cunning. It served as a model of how individuals could navigate the dangers and complexities of the world by relying not just on physical strength, but on intelligence, leadership, and moral integrity. However, as Western thought evolved, so did the interpretations of the Odyssey. In the Renaissance, for example, scholars began to focus on the humanistic elements of the epic, particularly the character of Odysseus. His wit, ability to adapt to situations, and capacity for self-reflection became the focus of intellectual discussions about individualism and human agency. The Renaissance saw a renewed interest in classical texts, and Odysseus was often portrayed as a symbol of human resilience and the potential for self-knowledge. This reading emphasized the heroic journey not just as a physical quest, but as a journey of self-discovery. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, with the rise of psychological and existential thought, scholars began to read the Odyssey through the lens of modern psychology. Sigmund Freud, for instance, saw Odysseus's long journey as a metaphor for the journey of the unconscious mind, with the various trials Odysseus faces representing inner conflicts, desires, and the process of individuation. Jungian scholars interpreted the challenges Odysseus encounters as symbolic archetypes, reflecting universal human experiences and psychological struggles. This psychoanalytic approach allowed for a deeper understanding of Odysseus's character and the deeper, often unconscious motivations that drive his actions. In the realm of feminist readings, the Odyssey has also been interpreted as a text that explores gender roles, power dynamics, and the complex relationships between men and women. Penelope, in particular, has been examined as a character who resists traditional passive roles, using her intelligence, cunning, and patience to maintain control over her household and her fate. While Odysseus is away, Penelope is the one who holds the kingdom together, preserving the memory of her husband and protecting her son. Feminist critics have noted that Penelope's quiet but determined resistance to the suitors is a powerful statement on female agency, showing that women, even in ancient times, exercised a form of power that was often overlooked or undervalued. Similarly, modern scholars have explored the ways in which the Odyssey addresses issues of masculinity. Odysseus, the quintessential hero, embodies a complex model of manhood that is characterized not only by physical strength, but by intellect, emotional control, and the ability to navigate both social and moral complexities. However, the poem also critiques Odysseus' excesses and flaws, his hubris, his inability to avoid temptation, and his eventual return to a home that is in disarray due to his absence. This critique of Odysseus as both a model of heroism and a flawed individual has led to readings of the Odyssey as a meditation on the complexities of masculinity, including the tension between heroism and vulnerability. In contemporary readings, the Odyssey is often viewed through the lens of modern existentialism, reflecting the search for meaning and identity in a chaotic and unpredictable world. Odysseus' journey home, filled with uncertainty, peril, and loss, mirrors the struggles of modern individuals who face challenges of identity, purpose, and the search for belonging. The theme of homecoming, central to the epic, resonates in contemporary society, where people often feel displaced or alienated, and where the quest for meaning and self-understanding is a perennial struggle. The question of identity is particularly pertinent in modern interpretations of the Odyssey. Odysseus' struggle to reclaim his identity after 20 years of absence reflects the experience of many individuals who are forced to confront and redefine themselves after long periods of separation, loss, or trauma. His return to Ithaca is not just about reclaiming a physical home, but about confronting his past, making peace with it, and moving forward into the future. This process of identity reconstruction is something that modern readers can relate to, whether in the context of personal transformation, social reintegration, or the challenges of rebuilding relationships after significant loss or estrangement. The theme of memory is also central to modern interpretations of the Odyssey. In the modern world, where memory is both fragmented and fleeting, the epic's treatment of the past as a force that shapes the present and the future is especially relevant. Odysseus's longing for home and his need to reconcile with the past reflect the psychological realities of trauma, nostalgia, and the search for closure. In contemporary culture, where individuals often struggle to come to terms with their personal histories, Odysseus's journey becomes a metaphor for the ways in which we must engage with our memories, not just to remember, but to understand, and integrate them into our sense of self. In addition, modern interpretations of the Odyssey have increasingly focused on the global and political dimensions of the epic. The story of Odysseus, constantly wandering and displaced, speaks to the experiences of refugees, immigrants, and displaced people in the modern world. The trials Odysseus faces, the monsters, the storms, the betrayals, can be seen as symbolic of the external and internal struggles faced by those who are forced to leave their homes, whether by war, conflict, or social upheaval. In this way, the Odyssey has been read as a universal story of survival and the search for belonging, one that transcends the boundaries of time, space, and culture. The notion of homecoming also takes on new meanings in the context of globalization and technological change. In an era where people can travel and communicate across vast distances, the idea of home becomes more fluid. The challenges faced by Odysseus in his long voyage resonate with the modern experience of being constantly on the move, both physically and emotionally. As individuals navigate the complexities of modern life, the search for a place of belonging and identity remains a central and universal concern. The enduring legacy of the Odyssey is perhaps most evident in its many adaptations and reimaginings. In popular culture, the influence of Homer's epic extends far beyond literature, impacting film, television, theater, and other media. The structure and themes of the Odyssey are frequently invoked in stories of personal struggle, adventure, and return. One of the most famous modern adaptations of the Odyssey is the Coen brothers' 2000 film O Brother, Where Art Thou?, which transposes the epic's themes and structure to the American South during the Great Depression. The film follows three escaped convicts, led by the cunning Ulysses Everett McGill, on a journey to return home to rescue Everett's wife and reclaim his family. The film mirrors many of the core themes of the Odyssey, including the wandering hero, the trials he faces, and the eventual return to a transformed home. The characters in O Brother, Where Art Thou? Embody the timeless qualities of Odysseus's companions, and the narrative structure of the film directly mirrors the episodic nature of Homer's epic. The influence of the Odyssey can also be seen in contemporary television series such as Lost, where a group of survivors stranded on an island must navigate both the external dangers of their environment and the internal struggles of identity, memory, and survival. Like Odysseus, the characters in Lost must contend with the unpredictability of fate, the weight of their past actions, and the uncertainty of homecoming. In this way, the Odyssey continues to inspire modern storytellers to explore themes of return, reconciliation, and personal transformation. In literature, authors such as James Joyce in Ulysses and Margaret Atwood in the Penelopiad have directly drawn on the structure and themes of the Odyssey in their own works. Joyce's Ulysses is a modernist reimagining of Odysseus' return, set in a single day in Dublin, and mirroring the complexity and fragmentation of Odysseus' own journey. Atwood's The Penelopiad, on the other hand, offers a feminist retelling of the story from Penelope's perspective, reinterpreting her actions and motivations in a new light. From literature to film to television, the Odyssey continues to inspire adaptations that reflect contemporary concerns while retaining the universal themes of the original text. The enduring relevance of the Odyssey is a testament to its timelessness, its ability to speak to the deepest parts of the human experience, and its capacity to evolve and adapt to new contexts while maintaining its fundamental truths. As we conclude our journey through the Odyssey, we find ourselves facing not just the end of a narrative, but the enduring power of an epic that has shaped the course of Western thought and culture for more than 2 millennia. From its origins in oral tradition to its role as a foundational text in the Western literary canon, the Odyssey has continued to evolve, adapt, and resonate with audiences across generations. Its themes of homecoming, identity, memory, justice, and the struggle between divine will and human agency remain as relevant today as they were when the poem was first composed. But what is it about the Odyssey that allows it to maintain its relevance in a world so far removed from the ancient Greek society that birthed it? The answer lies in the universal qualities that the epic explores, the very aspects of the human experience that transcend time and place. At its core, the Odyssey is a story about homecoming, not just in a literal sense, but also in a metaphorical one. It is about the struggle to return to a place of safety, belonging, and self-understanding after being torn apart by external forces. Whether we interpret Odysseus' journey as an individual's quest for identity, a ruler's effort to restore order, or a man's attempt to find peace after trauma, the Odyssey captures the deep human longing for reconciliation, both with others and with oneself. The central motif of homecoming is one that resonates across cultures, classes, and eras. In our contemporary world, where the idea of home can be fraught with complexities, whether due to displacement, war, or the pressures of modern life, Odysseus's journey speaks to the universal desire to return to something familiar, something stable. But the poem does not present homecoming as a simple destination. For Odysseus, home is not just the physical place of Ithaca. It is the restoration of his identity, his relationships, and his sense of self. This theme of returning to oneself, of reconciling the past with the present, continues to be one of the most powerful and compelling aspects of the story. In today's world, the relevance of the Odyssey can also be seen in the broader social and political landscape. As the epic engages with themes of leadership, justice, and the rebuilding of communities, it offers valuable insights into the dynamics of power and responsibility. Odysseus's return to Ithaca is not merely about reclaiming his throne. It is about restoring order to a society that has been torn apart by violence, neglect, and lawlessness. His eventual victory over the suitors and the resolution of the conflict with the families of the slain suitors serve as a powerful reminder of the importance of justice and reconciliation in the healing process of a fractured society. Restoration is not only a political theme in the Odyssey, it is also a deeply personal one. As Odysseus rebuilds his relationships with his wife, Penelope, and his son Telemachus, he undergoes a psychological process of reintegration. His long absence and the trials he faces on his journey have irrevocably changed him. But through his interactions with those he loves, he finds a way to reconcile the man he has become with the man he once was. This internal restoration mirrors the external restoration of Ithaca, and highlights the connection between personal growth and social harmony. In many ways, identity is the central theme of Odysseus's journey. Who is Odysseus when he returns to Ithaca? Who is he after all that he has endured? The story of his return is not just about reclaiming a kingdom. It is about reclaiming his identity, understanding the person he has become, and coming to terms with the choices he has made. This search for identity is a deeply human quest that continues to resonate today, particularly in an age when issues of self-discovery and personal transformation are more prominent than ever. The tension between fate and free will, another central theme of the Odyssey, also continues to be relevant in contemporary discussions of human agency. In the epic, the gods play a crucial role in determining the course of Odysseus' journey, yet it is Odysseus' own actions, decisions, and cunning that ultimately determine his fate. This interplay between divine will and human agency speaks to the modern understanding of the human condition, where individuals are often caught between the forces of external circumstance and their own capacity for choice. In today's world, where many people feel subject to forces beyond their control, Odysseus's ability to exercise free will, even in the face of overwhelming obstacles, remains a powerful symbol of human resilience. Memory is another theme that ties the past to the present. In the Odyssey, Odysseus's journey is as much about remembering as it is about returning. His encounters with the dead in the underworld, his yearning for home, and his constant reflection on his past experiences demonstrate the centrality of memory in shaping both personal identity and the narrative of the journey. In modern life, memory continues to play a central role in our understanding of self and in our relationships with others. The process of reconciling the past with the present and of integrating the lessons of history into our actions remains one of the most profound challenges of contemporary existence. The gods, too, remain relevant in modern readings of the Odyssey, though they are often interpreted more symbolically than literally. The gods in the epic represent the forces beyond human control: fate, destiny, nature, and they interact with humans in ways that reflect the unpredictability of life. In modern interpretations, the gods may represent psychological forces, societal structures, or even existential uncertainties that shape human experience. Odysseus's relationship with the gods serves as a metaphor for the human struggle to find meaning and purpose in a world that is often beyond our understanding or control. One of the most striking aspects of the Odyssey's enduring relevance is its ability to speak to both the individual and the collective experience. The themes of personal transformation, leadership, family, and social order resonate with readers in a variety of contexts. In our modern world, where issues of immigration, displacement, and the search for belonging are more pressing than ever, the Odyssey provides a lens through which we can reflect on the human need for home, community, and identity. The epic also continues to influence the world of popular culture, where the figure of the wandering hero remains a powerful archetype. From films and television shows to novels and video games, the hero's journey, much like Odysseus's own, is a structure that continues to captivate modern audiences. Whether in the adventures of superheroes, the quests of fantasy protagonists, or the personal struggles of characters in contemporary dramas, the idea of a hero navigating challenges and seeking redemption mirrors the timeless narrative of the Odyssey. Moreover, the story of the Odyssey endures not just in adaptations, but in its profound ability to inspire reflection on human values. The epic's exploration of heroism, not just through physical feats, but through intelligence, endurance, and moral decision-making, continues to inspire individuals to confront life's challenges with resilience and self-awareness. The ultimate lesson of the Odyssey is that the journey, with all its trials, is just as important as the destination. What defines a hero in the end is not the conquest of external forces, but the ability to understand oneself and navigate the complexities of life with wisdom and compassion. The Odyssey endures because it is a universal epic that transcends its cultural and historical origins. The core themes of the epic, homecoming, identity, memory, justice, and the quest for meaning speak to fundamental human concerns that have remained unchanged throughout history. The fact that the story continues to resonate with readers and audiences today attests to the power of Homer's narrative and the enduring appeal of Odysseus's journey. In a world that is constantly changing, the Odyssey offers us a mirror to reflect on who we are, where we come from, and where we are going. It reminds us that, no matter how far we may travel or how many trials we may face, the journey toward understanding ourselves and finding our way back home is one of the most profound quests we can undertake. The Odyssey, with its timeless narrative, continues to resonate deeply with readers, scholars, and creators across the globe. The epic's influence extends beyond the ancient world, shaping our understanding of storytelling, human nature, and the complex web of fate, identity, and memory. As we reflect on the lasting legacy of this foundational work, it becomes evident that the Odyssey is not simply an artifact of the past, but a living, breathing text that continues to provide insight, meaning, and inspiration for modern generations. The story of Odysseus's long and arduous journey is more than a tale of adventure. It is an enduring meditation on the human experience itself. One of the most enduring impacts of the Odyssey lies in its contribution to the structure and themes of Western literature. The epic's influence is pervasive, not just in terms of narrative conventions, but also in the way it establishes the archetype of the hero's journey. This structure, the protagonist's departure from the ordinary world, the trials faced during the journey and the eventual return home, is one that has been adopted, adapted, and reinterpreted by authors, filmmakers, and storytellers throughout history. In literature, the concept of the hero's journey has served as the foundation for countless works, from medieval tales like the Song of Roland to the modern adventures of characters like Frodo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling's series. The Odyssey has shaped how we understand the journey of self-discovery and transformation. The idea of a hero returning home after overcoming numerous trials is a central theme in Western storytelling, and it all traces its roots back to Homer's epic. The hero's journey is also reflected in the structure of many modern novels and films, where the protagonist often embarks on a physical or emotional journey and must face both internal and external conflicts before achieving a form of reconciliation, growth, or redemption. The template for character arcs in contemporary literature, where the hero's challenges force them to confront their own limitations, flaws, and desires, has its origins in the Odyssey. The centrality of this journey is one of the reasons that Homer's epic has remained a touchstone for writers, filmmakers, and artists to this day. At its core, the Odyssey is not just about the return of a king, it is about the return of a man to himself. The journey is as much psychological and emotional as it is physical. Odysseus's struggle to reclaim his home, his family, and his identity after 20 years of exile speaks to the larger human experience of navigating loss, trauma, and the search for belonging. The epic engages with themes that remain profoundly relevant in today's world: how we understand ourselves, how we relate to others, how we reconcile with the past, and how we rebuild our lives after periods of hardship. One of the most compelling aspects of the Odyssey is its exploration of the self and identity. Odysseus is not simply trying to return home, he is also trying to return to who he was before the war and the long years of wandering. The experiences he undergoes transform him, both physically and psychologically. By the time he returns to Ithaca, he is a different man from the one who left. The theme of personal transformation is central to the epic. It speaks to the universal human experience of facing adversity, learning from it, and finding a way to adapt and grow. In modern terms, Odysseus's journey reflects the process of self-actualization, a term that describes the psychological process of realizing one's fullest potential. Just as Odysseus must confront his past actions, reconcile with his decisions, and reclaim his lost identity, so too do individuals today wrestle with their pasts and strive to integrate their experiences into a coherent sense of self. The quest for personal understanding, closure, and reintegration remains a timeless pursuit, one that transcends the boundaries of culture, era, and circumstance. Another area in which the Odyssey continues to resonate is in its moral and ethical lessons. The epic is filled with challenges and choices that raise profound questions about the nature of justice, revenge, and the consequences of our actions. Odysseus's decisions, both good and bad, serve as a reflection on the complexities of ethical judgment. The consequences of his actions, whether it is the blinding of Polyphemus or his treatment of the suitors, force the reader to grapple with the implications of pride, vengeance, and forgiveness. In particular, the contrast between vengeance and justice is explored throughout the epic. Odysseus is driven by the desire for revenge against those who have wronged him, particularly the suitors who have desecrated his home. His violent retribution against them is justified within the narrative, but it is also tempered by the involvement of the gods, who ultimately ensure that peace is restored. This dynamic complicates the idea of simple retribution and introduces the concept of divine justice, which is often more nuanced and complex than human understanding. In a contemporary context, the Odyssey challenges us to consider the ethics of revenge, forgiveness, and accountability. The cycle of violence that threatens to engulf Ithaca after Odysseus's return, when the families of the suitors seek retribution, is finally broken by divine intervention. This resolution suggests that while human actions are important, there must also be a higher moral order that transcends individual grievances. The notion of restorative justice, where the focus is on repairing harm and restoring balance rather than punishing the wrongdoer, is a theme that can be explored within the context of modern legal and ethical debates. Additionally, hospitality, euxenia, remains an important moral theme in the Odyssey. The poem underscores the sacredness of welcoming strangers and treating them with respect. In a world where division, xenophobia, and distrust of the other are rampant, the lessons of the Odyssey about the importance of generosity, respect for others, and the interconnectedness of all people are particularly poignant. By contrast, the suitor's blatant disregard for Ixnaya serves as a warning about the destructive consequences of selfishness and disrespect for societal norms. In the contemporary world, where issues of displacement, migration, and identity are more pressing than ever, the Odyssey takes on a new relevance. Odysseus's journey mirrors the experiences of modern-day refugees and migrants, individuals who find themselves far from home, facing countless trials, and longing for a place of safety and belonging. The metaphor of homecoming is particularly poignant in the context of today's globalized world, where millions are forced to leave their homes due to war, economic hardship, or environmental disaster. Moreover, the epic also engages with the psychological and emotional toll of such journeys. The trauma of displacement, the alienation that comes with being away from home, and the desire for reintegration with one's past and family are themes that resonate deeply with individuals who face the trauma of migration or long-term separation. Odysseus's constant struggle to remember and stay connected to his home serves as a powerful metaphor for the resilience and hope that individuals must summon to overcome the emotional and psychological challenges of exile. The themes of identity and self-discovery are equally important in the context of modern life. The search for one's true self, the exploration of personal values, and the desire for a coherent sense of purpose are all central concerns for people in the modern era. As society becomes increasingly fragmented and complex, individuals are often confronted with questions of who they are and where they belong. The Odyssey, in this sense, provides a timeless framework for understanding the quest for self-identity and the transformative power of facing adversity. Ultimately, the enduring power of the Odyssey lies in its ability to speak to the deepest aspects of the human experience: our longing for home, our search for meaning, and our struggle to reconcile the past with the present. Through its richly layered narrative, complex characters, and timeless themes, the epic continues to offer profound insights into human nature and the challenges of living a meaningful life. The journey of Odysseus, with all its trials and triumphs, serves as a metaphor for the journey we all undertake in our search for self-knowledge, redemption, and belonging. The Odyssey has lived on for over 2 millennia, because it is not just the story of a single hero, but the story of every person who has ever longed for home, faced hardship, and sought to understand their place in the world. Its continuing relevance in literature, art, philosophy, and popular culture testifies to its power to inspire and resonate across time. As long as people continue to ask the profound questions of who they are, where they belong, and how they make sense of their experiences, the Odyssey will continue to be a touchstone, a guide, a mirror, and a source of wisdom for future generations.